So let's just go through one by one. Let's look at this one. No, let's not look at this one. Yes, this is the first. I think this is now in chronological order from bottom to top, and also it will be missing the entries that are at the top of the tag, because for some reason on the browser I can't open everything in chronological order. It will always show the top, presumably most liked images at the top, and so it then doesn't display them in chronological order underneath. But we'll get to them. So yeah, now we should be able to just go through. And I did not go to art school for art. All right, let's begin. It's really fun. It was a great first one to see, because it was shortly after I had been trying to draw a banana character and deciding that bananas were too difficult, and I would just give up.
Yeah, well, the guys that were doing bananas, I mean, must have been quite brave to do so.
Yeah,
I thought this
exactly.
was so weird. I don't know if it's wearing a condom on his head.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like normally you'd have like a balaclava thing. I totally get that it's performing that purpose, but because you see the face through it, you're like, is this a skin tight thing? Is it see through? And it's so dirty too. Yeah, no, it's really good fun. I mean, in terms of criticism, I think it's just like you need to show like links between the joints. At the moment, it feels like it should all fall apart. There's no like a connective tissue between body bits. But leading on from the banana guy that we chose, who has a banana gun, I find it amusing that this is a banana character with a gun. So it really alludes to the idea of a banana gun, and then just subverts that by giving him a real one. And I find that really funny. Yes, the peach doctor. Yeah, this one's just really cute. Really nice use of the shape in the top. It's like a simplistic use of the is it an apple? Oh yeah, so this one actually confused me, because I get peach from the color, because it tends towards orange more, and then forget that of course it's an apple because it's a doctor.
Yeah, it's playing on the words "a doctor a day keeps the apple away." It's when it should be the other way around.
You eat the poor unsuspecting apple doctor. It's really nice, really good fun, and like keeping the color scheme simplistic is really important. I think it works here.
Step one, draw a circle asks, did you go to art? Did you go to school for art?
I didn't. No, I did an art foundation course, but I did pottery and watched Feng Zhu whilst I was there. So that was that was my experience of it. Matthias, though, you can answer the same question.
I did not go to any form of art school. I think the closest thing was mentorship. I did the mentorship with Adam Duff in 2017 for 8 weeks, and he kind of helped me push the narrative designs as well as technical level, strengthening my technical skills a little bit more. But after those 8 weeks, that was just me all the way, alone.
Anyway, quick critique. I think because you've kept the head mostly round, something I really associate with an apple, and actually what Matthias did with his is accentuating how it becomes broad at the top and slightly pinches at the bottom. But beyond that, I think if you go for like a more saturated red and then have it tend towards green instead of yellow, I think it'll immediately say apple more clearly, because the colors to me feel peachy.
Yeah, I agree.
I do like the shine though. Oh yeah, these are cool. I think this guy did a couple. This is fun. The floating head popping out of the avocado, like the stone. I think that's a really cool idea. What have you, Matthias? What you think?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's got a bit of that graphical feel to it too. I think it would have been nice to see actually going full on with the black, for example, on the legs, and just leaving it more abstract. What's that comic artist that did Hellboy?
Oh, Mike Mignola.
Yeah, it could definitely go with something like that if you
Yeah.
really wanted to study with more of silhouettes and
And I think essentially what you need to do is you've got like very thick lines everywhere, and ideally you would make some of these areas with the details you need to read more clearly, like the face and body. If you pull back on some of the line weight, drop the things that are in the background to pure black, then it will become clearer to read where like the arms are crossing over and stuff like that. Because a place like this where the arm has this really thick dark lines going through it, it makes it merge with the back leg and makes it hard to see what's layered on top of what. So making sure that like the space inside these lines link up more clearly will make it easier to see the design.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
But it's cool. He just chucks bombs around, which also like must be based on the avocado seed shape, which I think is good. It's a great idea. We have a little kiwi dino. This is adorable because it's like a little dinosaur hatching out of an egg, which I think is a great use of it. Also, the striations you get inside a kiwi, you've got those striations coming out from the eyes, which they sort of look like eyelashes, but like sort of twisted around. It's a nice use of that detail.
I don't know. I just look at the character and it's just so silly. It's a nice play on the baby dinosaur, like the baby creature popping out of an egg.
Yeah, that hasn't shaken off its egg yet, its eggshell yet.
Uh-huh.
I'm banana. Oh, silly kiwi dino. You're not a banana.
Yeah, what I would do is just study more form and light. And
yeah, here it's just the forms are kind of weak and hard to read. Especially on this grey background. I think just pop that background up to white, or darken it more so that the value of the value of the green doesn't sort of match, because at the moment it doesn't pop out enough, so we don't get a good sense of the silhouette. Yeah, here it's mostly just a form rendering that needs to be addressed. Pomegranate lady. Yeah, I like this a lot because of the immediate communication of the fruit. I think it's immediately clear.
By the way, hello, Augusto Quirino.
Augusto Quirino, hello.
We just had our they announced the winners.
Yeah, we've announced the winners, and we're going through all the rest now. Yeah, I think this uses a lot of the shapes really well, and like the sort of spindly leg limbs, and the fact that there's more limbs, it reminds me of the connective tissue that you have between all of the juicy seeds. I think it captures that feeling very well. Here it's just sort of, I think you need to be a bit more refined with how you construct your lines. Like some of these arms, like this arm here looks really, really nice. And then an arm coming through like this, where it sort of pinches a little too much, it breaks the sense that it's as solid as the rest. So there's just like small details which I think you need to keep on top of to make the anatomy feel stronger. And then overall, making sure that you're consistent with your lighting, because we've got like shadows on top of the arm here and then shadows under the arm there. It makes it quite confusing as to where the light's actually coming in, which direction it's coming in from.
Yeah, it just makes sense to me.
All right, got a banana lady. Yeah, she's real fun. I mean, it sort of feels like she's falling backwards in her pose. I think it might even work if she didn't have the shadow and she was like in a sort of mid-air pose. Because otherwise there's like, it's good fun that you've got the eye really flowing down through these skirt pieces. And then having them flick up at the end is a good way to make sure you don't just look down these and leave the image.
Yeah. I would be careful with the length of the skirt so that it doesn't... it feels like there's a bit of a tangent between the skirt and the ground. It feels like it would touch the ground at any moment, and at that point it can easily become distracting as well.
Yeah, and they're sort of, I think they either need to be significantly longer than the legs or shorter, because they're sort of similar lengths at the moment and they kind of compete in that space. And also I think the use of the green is too bright. Like the banana's core color is yellow, and so that should be the brightest, and the color that you use as the focus, and then everything else kind of needs to balance with that by being more subdued or less frequent. So in this case, I think just turning down how bright that green is.
Yeah, essentially. It would also allow the yellow to pop out more and shine.
Yeah, and it's nice where you've like communicated that you've got layered leaves on these boots, but I don't get that same feeling from anywhere else really, like the waistband, for example. And it'd be nice to just put in a bit more of that leaf texture so that you get the sense of what material this is. Because it's starting to work quite nicely on this boot, but then I lose it with the rest of the implementation of the green. Yes, this. It's a fantastic use of like the little seeds in the strawberry, and it's just so creepy. What do you think, Matthias?
I haven't seen this one.
Have you not?
Oh, I did. I liked it. What the hell? I guess what was it?
Yeah,
That is such a fascinating idea with the sort. It almost has a bit of a spiritual-esque with this sort of like multiple eye idea.
Yeah, it's like the third eye, but then also the 15th eye, and everything in between. I think it's a really cool idea. And using the slice with the strawberry for the belly button, that's a great position for it.
Also, I think this one has. I think the clothes are supposed to mimic that of chocolate.
Yeah, exactly, like it's been dipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really nice design choices, I think. The only thing that sort of lets it down would just be, I think, bits of anatomy, really, like making sure the length of the arms match and things like that. And then when it comes to rendering the forms, making sure you've picked a single light source and then treating the forms as their basic shapes. So like the head, you need to make sure that you have that bright highlight at the top, and then everything around the head just falls off to darkness from that point, because it's essentially spherical. And that will sort of take away some of the flatness that it has at the moment. But yeah, I think it's like the ideas that are going into it are really cool.
I'm gonna see if I can.
Oh, you do say a best enjoys the complimentary chocolate coating. Well, that's the thing. It's nice if we give it the test where we just look at the image first and then read the description afterwards, because ideally we can get everything from the description, just from the design itself.
Yeah.
And now we have Cherry Lady, so we're going to skip over because we've said plenty about her already. This was a fruit that I had not come across before. It's the wood apple, also known as a bale apple. I think it's a fun use of like that sort of decaying look. Like we were discussing earlier, there's only a few that kind of used the idea of decaying flesh in their designs. I think here you just need to make sure you're sort of a bit more balanced with like how you accentuate the anatomy, because the sort of mismatch of big arm and then arm that's decaying maybe needs to be emphasized a bit more so it feels more deliberate. And then just the position of these bulging muscles in the arm. I think some reference would really help with making sure that the muscles are placed correctly.
I think the muscles are actually quite impressively put together. But yeah, making sure that the proportions are right. And
yeah, it's proportions of them, isn't it, rather than placement?
Yeah, the placement seems to be right in most places. Yeah, there are some stuff that is quite off, and there you can't always see all the muscles around. But my biggest concern is lighting and making sure that the lighting wraps around the form correctly, and that you can read the character with the shadows around it.
Yeah, because I actually really like the feeling of these harsh shadows on the legs. That's great, and it communicates like the bright desert sun. But we need to make sure that we get the same intensity of shadow on the arm, under the head. Like it's much darker on the leg, and then it's for some reason much lighter over here. And I sort of it implies maybe some strong bounce light coming from underneath, but it wouldn't make this much of a change to the core shadow. And then across the chest, I think I'd expect to also see a lot of shadow. Okay, we have the painted up version of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just noticed.
Which is not. I like the use of highlights and stuff in here. It's nice.
The next one is
This is rad.
very rad.
Really, really bold. It's cool. I think here it's just making sure things are balanced. Like I get the. I think I really like the proportions of the design. I think they would work really well. They feel like an old school kind of Sonic inspired character. Those sort of proportions. My only problem is then just the length of arms. Like the implication is that this upper arm starts at the shoulder and comes down to here, and that's the same length as the entirety of his left arm. So just making sure that those like bend in the right places and feel equivalent, because the legs here, like this one feels like it's considerably longer because the hips aren't bending to allow for the wide stance. So it's just there's some things which are sort of more pose related and how you match each side, essentially make it symmetrical in terms of the length of each object.
Also make sure that the size of the eyes are about the same, so you make sure that this symmetry can be hard, even if you even harder when you're doing it traditionally. So doing a quick sketch under and making sure that your proportions are correct can really save you a lot of time.
Yeah. But otherwise, really cool, really punchy, and it uses the elements of the fruit really well. This is also really fun. It's got that like meditation, like old master that you'll find in a temple, or maybe just in a cave in the desert or something. Yeah, it's really cool. I think this is by the same. I can't remember the name. I need to quickly check. Yeah, it is Shano by Art.
Oh, interesting.
Because
3 different ones.
Oh, 3. Because what I'd say is basically this uses the darkness. Like you've got thinner lines elsewhere so that you can communicate the shapes better, and then you've gone in for thick dark shadows. So this actually feels closer to what we were describing with the Mike Mignola.
Yeah, this one definitely, but it works a lot here. I like the details of where you have the light in the banana, and then it goes down into the shadow, and you see a little bit of that light, kind of as if the bumps of the surface is kind of coming through and showing itself in the light. And it's really cool.
Yeah, I think this works. It's much stronger than the other one. So, yeah, like what you're doing here, I think works a lot better. Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. Yes, the watermelon devil. So Matthias and I are discussing this one for a while because it's generally I think I really like the body shapes throughout. The biggest problem is actually their pose, because it makes it very hard to read from a glance. There's too many limbs overlapping, and it means that if you just took a silhouette of this shape, like a good test is the silhouette test, where you just make everything that's your character, if you make it black on the screen, if you can read what's happening, where their legs are going and that kind of thing, because I think it would be very difficult to tell here, since all of these legs combine into one large dark chunk. All of these limbs, sorry.
They all stack up. They're all the same shape when they stack up, as you can see. What I do like a lot about it is I guess the motion, or the implied motion with the seeds that's running down throughout the arms and the legs. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really good, because it's really nice how you constantly see the motion of the leg and like these subtle curves coming from the hip into the thigh.
It also shows the opportunity to show the form.
Yeah, exactly. Show how it would wrap around the surface.
In terms of color, though, I would either push back on the red and allow the green to come out, or push back on the green to allow the red to come out.
Yeah,
because a lot of them scream very loudly.
And it would be cool to have some variation across the surface. Like you've had it tend towards white, which is cool. I think using that and extending the amount of white that you have across the character. So maybe you could have a gradient coming down to the arm, would be a great way to separate elements and give it a bit of variation across.
And yes, Augusto, we are actually going to review and look over all of the entries. I think everybody deserves it because
Yeah, yeah,
why
exactly.
not?
Whilst like I'm amazed how many entries there are for the first competition we've ever organised. But this at some point obviously won't be possible if there's too many entries. So it's great to do it whilst it's still manageable essentially. Anyway, another one from Shono Buyout. I think this is also great. I just love that he's got a bite out of him. He's completely missing an arm.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
what a cool little motion hanging over and all
The banana girl. This is great because you've captured the texture of the banana so well. It does really make her skin feel like old and desiccated almost. Which you've then matched with like the sort of mature woman face and the dark lipstick. I think like it all supports each other very nicely.
Like the little plaster mark that she has in the middle.
Yeah, the sticker.
DMV. Yeah, a little sticker. She's a product, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think all the stuff in this is really cool. It's maybe just it's possibly because you've got such a bright yellow background. I can see that choice working, but at the moment it's just making it hard to see where the skirt is, especially the pieces that are coming off from behind her. And then in terms of where you use contrast, I don't immediately think to look at the face because the most contrast is like around the chest, and then also these leaves around the side. They're quite distracting. So sort of managing where the eye goes in this image, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah.
But again, the chocolate dip look I think is great, and using that to like subtly censor her is a really good idea. Ah yes, the pear.
The pear punk.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. The slightly golden pear texture that you get on the surface is something which I was hoping I'd see utilized, and it's really well done here. Like it makes them look like sort of silky harem pants.
Yeah. I think my main concern is that it doesn't make me think of a punk when I look at this, though.
I wouldn't think punk particularly. She looks like she's a musician. I don't know why I get that sense. I think it's because there's kind of like these swoopy violin-y curves in her body.
I think it's mainly the black and white.
It might be the black and white.
But yeah, I think so. This person mainly focused on the simplicity of the design as well, and let that speak for itself. The main thing I would look out for is make sure that your lighting is consistent. It doesn't seem to. It's a bit hard to figure out where the light is hitting on her body, and then you have an interesting choice of rim light, which also seems to kind of run a little bit randomly throughout her body as well. So making sure that's also consistent.
Yeah, and like making the contrast between light and dark areas in the same object. It's very intense. You go from the bright green like almost entirely to black, and there's little reason for that to become so dark. It's not really in shadow from anything else. So it's sort of distracting, and it adds a bunch of contrast in an area that shouldn't be about contrast. It should be about larger shapes. So looking out for the local values of materials like this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the grapes. I do like the really shy look because I don't know, all the grapes bunched together. I think it's one where it uses the feeling you get from the fruit well, like all the grapes bunched together because they're shy and they don't want to confront the world on their own. And I think they've transferred that feeling to a character. Yeah, I think it's really good for that. The main criticism would just be sort of things to do with anatomy and lighting. So making sure your forms read properly, and yeah, there's just anatomy things that could be improved.
It's also interesting that this person actually used kind of like an ant type character, where the character is made out of wood.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that before. that was interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like the stalk of the plant is the actual character itself, and then it's sort of decorated with grapes. But I guess it didn't distract me from the fact that this was clearly a grape character. So I think they used that well.
Mm-hmm.
This dude's so fun. I feel like this is like a perfect NPC to find in a game.
I can see why. You can find he has all the knowledge.
Yeah, the little wise man,
Yeah.
very humble.
So this must be. Oh, this is a mango.
Mm.
Oh, interesting. Well, it doesn't actually make me think of. I would first. I mean, to be quite honest, it almost made me think of a pear because of the shape first.
Mm.
But I can see why I would say mango because of the color of the skin. But it looks very, very humanoid, so it could be easily confused.
Yeah, I think you need to do something to communicate mango a bit more. And I see how you've like mango skins have gradients between red and green, and I think that's probably what distinguishes them as a mango. Whereas here it could be like strawberry, which has a green leaf but a red flesh. So I think to make sure it's just clearly mango, you need to have a gradient between those two colors. And then like the flesh within, that's probably the most important color of all, like that bright and translucent orangey yellow. So perhaps making that the thing that stands out, so you bring attention to his face, and then having like a gradient or sort of splotchy colors across the clothing could then like really show that it's the soft mango interior and then the colors of the skin.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think the simplicity works in this case.
Also, be aware of cropping of the images. Right now, there's a lot of empty space on the right side. So
Yeah, I think that's probably what makes me think of him as an NPC, because I can see him like sitting on the edge of a cliff or something that you find in the world, because of that empty space around him. All right, we've got a. It could be any of the mandarin, tangerine, clementine. But I think it communicates it really well. The use of the pith, like the stuff that you peel from between the segments, I think that's great.
what's even greater is the arms.
Yeah,
It's literally that.
exactly. Just like the really dainty pith. And so I think again, this is a great use of like the feeling you get from fruit. You've got this dainty pith that you like gently peel out, and converting that into like a delicate ballet dancer makes a lot of sense.
Can see that.
Yeah, it's just a matter of lighting and rendering the forms so that they feel three-dimensional here, I think. And also I try and avoid having shapes that are the same size, like the head and body almost exactly the same shape and size, and ideally you want to have some variation there. So my instinct would be to go for smaller body, because generally when you stylize characters, small body, large head is what kind of makes something look endearing or cute. And if you went the opposite way, then it may fight against the idea that this is a dainty character, because their body would be much larger and it would kind of give the impression of like a thick, heavy character. But otherwise, I think it's a great idea. All right, I've got a trio now.
Yeah, this person did a little series.
These are lovely.
Interesting. So this is the what's it?
So this one, I don't know, and there's no comments or description about it, so it's the only one that I can't identify. Maybe blueberry, but the chunky geometric shape of it doesn't support that.
The only thing I can tie it with is just the color and maybe even the shape. So I would say either blueberry or something of the like. And that's where when it comes to creating character design, it's very important that when you're trying to convey a certain message to a person or trying to tell a story, that you're very clear about that and that you don't confuse people. So then you have a situation like this where, if you want if it was blueberry, and so if it's not, then you would have to go reconsider those shapes that you applied. Maybe you could have actually kept them in, but kept them separate and actually have the blueberry inside somewhere, for example,
Yeah.
as the head. But But
But
3 arms.
that's the thing. In general, the shape design and the stylization is really cool, and I mean that's something I would say for all of them. I like this style a lot. It's good fun. Our criticism here was mostly that we see him as a cool detective type, and that's his personality. And then the lemon inclusion doesn't feel like it sort of necessarily gels with that. It's not that it doesn't fit. It's just it doesn't feel like it's drawing from the fact that he's a lemon. Nothing about the presence of the lemon seems to affect the actual feeling of the character I get from him. So there's like a lack of synergy. It's kind of like it's just a cool detective that's been reskinned as a lemon. But that said, I think his proportions are really fun. And like the choice of the subtle pink purple jacket is a great way to add that like color pop.
To be honest, I feel like a face really fits the lemon on the whole body.
You think? I think it fits into that shape really well, but I don't know if like, does he look sour? He looks almost like a sort of dad figure.
There's a sour dad figure. Sick of his wife or some shit like that.
Maybe this is the wife.
Man, but she looks so nice though.
She does. She looks real cute. Yeah, I mean, I think the only things we could level against it is that we'd like to see more use of the fruit throughout. So like this dress here feels very unrelated to the fact that she's a cherry. If it was green, or if it was sort of using some of the patterns from the leaf, that kind of thing, I think could help tie it together. Because otherwise we kind of get this slight feeling of like a Mr. Potato Head where you've taken a fruit and stuck limbs into it. But yeah, overall, I think this series is lovely. I think you've done a really good job. Cherry Moya. So this is essentially the sweet apple that I did. And to be honest, I had that communicated to me mostly from this seed shape. I then realized that the head was actually a cross section of it, and it's got these like 4 eyes, which I really quite like. I think that's a good use of that cross section.
Yeah, I kind of like the. I mean, yeah, I kind of like the use of design. For example, on the negative shape from his shoulder to his arm to his forearms and then to his hands again, and the same thing that mirrors in his leg, and then you have the white in the knees, and then back to
yeah. So actually, you pointed that out. It's interesting because the upper body sets a design sort of language or a design rule, which is that armor is the skin, and then the body is made of the flesh. But these knees, these aren't his knees. These are knee pads, but in the same color as his flesh. So at first glance, I read those as exposed knees, but they're actually knee pads on top.
Okay.
So that's like a case where he set a design sort of rule and then broken it underneath. It barely makes a difference because I still kind of just read it as a knee, and then that's fine. But make sure if you do set like a really hard design rule like that, you don't break it, because in this case it's really weird to have these like soft squishy knee pads on otherwise an entirely hard armored body.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I do really like the flow of that, and I think his body, like the rendering here actually is really nice for like the chiseled abs and stuff. Yeah, it's cool.
When it comes to lighting, again, make sure you're for example, you have the highlight that is coming from the left side on the seed, and then the light seems to be coming on the right side, so make sure that the lighting is consistent, as well as making sure that the light wraps properly around the character and there's not too much contrast.
I think that's it. Like the contrast from highlight to essentially not highlight is too abrupt, and then we don't get that sense of form from it. But yeah, he's a cool one. Yeah, I love the design of this like weapon. He feels like a really strange, eccentric bounty hunter.
Yeah, we actually considered this guy for the top 10 actually.
Yeah, we were considering it for a while. Ultimately, it's just we found the presentation of it too messy.
Yeah.
So we liked so many of the ideas within it. Just mostly this gun. I think this gun's great. But the sort of distribution of colors and stuff within it doesn't make the arms like pop out from the chest. It doesn't sort of use the colors to clarify what part of the body's what. And I think if you were just a bit more sort of consistent with limbs will be like a darker green, and then the chest will be a light green, and then the cape is the light yellow. That would make it much easier to read what's going on in the design.
Yeah, I agree. As well as again, I'm saying this a lot with a lot of the characters, but again, make sure that you study your lights and your form.
Yeah. Like that's just a standard one. It's like
yeah, it's something that I keep seeing that's quite common, and it's quite hard to do.
It is absolutely maybe the hardest.
Mm-hmm. This one is fascinating. So this is more like an underwater looking.
It always does look underwater, and the lack of legs means it kind of feels like a squid with the things coming down. Yeah, it's really cool, and I like the use of the cage around the top. I can't remember the name of this fruit, but I know it. It's got this really like delicate.
The famous name for this fruit is called a Chinese lantern.
The famous name. Ah, okay. It's not a chrysanthemum, is it? I forget.
I'm trying to read the tags. What is this?
I can't remember what it's called, but I know it. I think I've heard of Chinese lantern as well. I'm just sure that there's like a Latin name for it. Physalis.
Oh yeah, Physalis.
That's it.
Because we saw other entries like this, but I wasn't quite sure because I was already used to Physalis.
Yeah, there's a couple of Physalises. I think it uses that really well, and like the proportion of shape going from thin to thick on the arms is very appealing. My problem is just like there needs to be a hole in the capsule at the top, because it makes it very hard to read his expression. I've actually only really noticed it now, but he's got this big grin and two big eyes. I hadn't actually noticed this before, but this white bit coming up through here is bared teeth. So I think you just need to open up some of this shape and make it more like a really big collar that wraps around and over the top, because it just covers up a bit too much.
Yeah. So a person was asking, how do you study form and light? And I mean, mainly you have to learn it from somewhere, and there's a lot of tutorials online how to do that. Now the one way to do it without actually having to look anything online is to study from life and do life studies. So you set something in your room, or you go and look at images that you can search for online, and you actually try and study and figure out where the light hits on the body and where the shadow wraps and where the shadow hits on other objects. Well, I'll give you a few resources so you can actually get study from. Is that okay with you?
Please do.
All right.
Because I think the main one, and it is very useful to start out with, is when you're just like doing grey boxes and spheres in simple lighting scenarios, and really making sure you understand how to light the simplest of objects.
Yeah.
Because for me, what it really highlights is the importance of like the interactions between objects. So before you start putting in any sort of like materials and colors, making sure that any element that you put into your design has the correct effect on the other elements in that same design. I think that's the most important thing to making it feel real and solid. So yeah, they're my tips on it. Here we've got a lychee. I immediately get lychee from this because of the thin, hard shell. Like there's the spikes on the shell, but also how thin it looks. I think they've captured that pretty well. Because yeah, again, it's like, imagine your experience with eating a lychee. Mine is, I remember this really crisp, tough shell that if I peel away with my nails, it gets stuck underneath and it really hurts. You know, that's the sort of experience I have from it. So making sure that you capture that sharpness in the design, I think is important, and this actually does it really well. With the crop, it's just it's confusing as to where the focal point would be. I would find it much more comfortable if most of his weight was on the right, was on the left, so that the empty space is on the right and it matches the position in which he's facing, like the direction he's facing. And then you could just have the huge morning star. You could have that just coiled around in front of him, and then you wouldn't have this awkward shoving the character off to the right so that you have space for the weapon.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of really fun uses of the design here. The main thing would just be making sure the texture that you've got on his armor wraps around properly at the edges, so that it doesn't sort of flatten itself out. And that's just making sure that it becomes thinner and compresses as it gets to the edge, which you've got a little bit, but just not quite enough to communicate that fully spherical form. Oh wait, I think someone said in the chat, hi, my cherry man with the Kamehameha. This must be it, right?
Scroll up and see, is that something related?
Endeavor Draws is not the same as Corel, but it is the same. Excellent. Yeah, the little cherry just being dragged along behind and screaming. I think that's wonderful. In general, there's some really nice effects in this. It's just the overabundance of red means that it's hard for any of the other reds to stand out. Like the background needs to be a totally different color, and then I think everything would really pop. But his expression, I think, is really fun, with a bit of refinement to basically make it clear where the forms of the face are. I think it's really like a really fun expression. He looks like he's having a lot of fun, but also like with this slight twisted evil. Yeah, and then like the underlighting, I think works with that really well, especially how we've got like an underlighting versus the bright neutral lighting from above. So yeah, the main thing is just to like manage your contrast. Manage your saturation levels so that the things like the glowing orb really feels like it's glowing and compared to the character itself. Because at the moment they're the same level of red, and if you look at real glowing objects, essentially the objects that they cast light onto can never be brighter than the source of that light. So being careful with those sort of things. And I think in this case, it unfortunately it covers up the legs because of its like excessive glow. So it's hard to see what his legs are doing underneath. But he's real good fun. Maybe just extend the arms as well. At the moment, they feel very short. If they're supposed to be coming towards the camera, then I think they just need to clearly widen as they come closer to us. But yeah, he's real fun, and like the sort of the old school design elements of having those like those balls around the ankles. I feel like that he feels like a classic villain. I think he could slot into I don't know where, like what sort of show, but those design elements, they almost feel like the stuff from Dragon Ball. So I feel like that's perfect. Certainly, if that's what you're going for.
I think
slight jester look.
If you wanted, I mean, just to keep in mind, if you're doing a similar light source in the future, that you allow most of the light source coming from, like the light source is wrapping mostly from the front. So most of it is coming from underneath, and you're seeing a bit from his chin, right, and then under his eyebrows. But I think in this case, it'd make more sense if it came directly on and hit his whole face, and you see mostly light hitting his face, and then you would only see a rim light from his behind, because I can see you really wanted to have this dramatic look to it, which is hard to do, especially in such a dark scene. But the rim light would allow you to see the silhouette of the character more, and the red would fill in a lot of that darkness.
Yeah, because at the moment the core shadow is directly across his face, but the face is the focal point, so we want to make sure that has enough light to be visible.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, really fun, really fun. Especially this guy in the back that's just being pulled along for the ride. All right, this boy. This is the horned melon, isn't it? At like all the different stages of ripeness. which I think is a really cool idea. Or at least it sort of feels like that because of the variations in color.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it was quite cool. I mean, it's really well rendered, and there's a lot of nice like shadow wrapping. Some areas where the lights are a little bit inconsistent, where the face feels the light's coming from the top, but then in some areas it feels like it's coming from the left,
mm.
uh, and just making sure that is consistent. The shit it has, I can really feel the form though of the character.
Yeah, and like actually places like the face, this nose, the hard shadow underneath, and then the cast shadow coming down. That stuff's lovely. And I think you need to make sure you apply the same cast shadows to the whole body. Like I'd expect these shoulders to really push out from the front and cast some shadow over the chest. And then same thing with these leaves down here. If these protruded more and cast, like I can see you've got some cast shadow here. I think it's just a little too small, so it almost reads like an outline rather than a block of like a chunk of value change. In terms of rendering, like the arms and legs, I think really capture the form well because you've got a clear highlight running through the middle and then the core shadow behind. And I think the body needs to be treated as like a single object so that you make sure that there's one brightest element throughout the body, and then everything else can be slightly unified in the shadow. Because at the moment, his arms and legs feel really solid, and his body feels quite flat in comparison. So like really emphasizing the light that's hitting the top and then putting the rest in shadow would be a great way to imply the overall form of his chest, and remove some of that sort of flatness that I was describing. Because we have that in the hat, like the contrast between the light on the top and the shadow underneath makes you immediately understand the planes of it. And I think you need to apply that same sort of process to the body. Sorry.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to point out was a lot of shapes are the same size. So you have the hat, the shoulders, and then you have all those other elements. They all kind of all feel that they are about the same shape. So even if you have a different material or a different object on the body, they all feel that they kind of stack on top of each other very similarly.
Yeah. Especially like the distances between shapes, like this sort of feels like roughly the same size as that, which is roughly the same size as this chunk. And like the spacing between all of these elements, there's no clear hierarchy between them. So it's in general, it's just very hard to know which bit you should be looking at any time. So yeah. But otherwise, very, very cool. Yeah, it's like Silver Surfer, except it's the Kiwi. I think this is really fun. I would say the first thing that I noticed was like the random placement of the seeds means that what I thought would have been a great way to show that he has nipples now feels like a really strange, not quite nipple, because this one's too high up and to the right, and this one's a bit too far into the chest. And so I think if you're just like committed to specific areas that you're going to put these seeds, and then cluster them slightly more, then they'll have a more appealing distribution.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
But it's really cool seeing them like halfway through the skin, getting their translucent feel. That's a really nice touch. And I think like if you imagined clustering them so that you had like a bunch of them in the head that would represent hair, and then it's like you have very few of them, the two in the middle, because I think you do need to show them like in the position of nipples, because otherwise they appear as them, but then they feel like they're in the wrong spot. Either take them away or add them in the correct place, and then you could have maybe them clustered towards the end of the legs or something, so that you have a gradient of density. And in generally, that's kind of what you want to try and put in. You want variation with how much density they are distributed. But otherwise, really fun pose, and generally pretty good like translation between real anatomy to like sort of chunkily sliced pieces of kiwi.
I like the fur. Where you actually utilize the leather and the fur translating this from the skin.
Yeah, in those shorts, I think that's really good. Yeah, really cool. All right, this is what was it? The Buddha's hand, I think it was called. I hadn't actually come across it before, but like I knew it wasn't a banana or something. So I think, despite me being totally unfamiliar with the fruit, they managed to communicate that it was like something different very well with this. I think they must have just described it in the comments. Yeah, the Buddha's hand. It's cool. The main problem for me would just be too, like, there's not enough variation between the materials across the thing. Like, I see some introduction of a slight green in the middle, and if you'd made this the green of the leaves, I think that would have been a great way to separate this as a piece. And then maybe you could do the same down at the bottom, and then like have a much lighter skin versus a darker, more saturated color in the hair. Basically separate those forms out a little bit more. But yeah, otherwise I think a lot of it's very cool. Maybe just some sort of like flow in the shapes. So you could cinch in the waist slightly more so that there's like a bit more of a change in width from the upper body to the lower body, and then show that the thighs are like obviously thicker than the calves. That kind of thing I think could accentuate it a bit more. But it's quite fun that he's walking on these like stilts of the Buddha's hand. It's fun.
Yeah, I don't know how much to add actually.
Yeah,
I agree with most of it.
It's almost like the same pose. Banana Man is great. Yeah, he's really fun. I think it's like it's a very awkward shape to use, and I think a lot of the comedy in this is how the face has been used.
Big
it's
chin
like
boy.
Straight banana, yeah, like big comedic chin, and then like he's got that gurning expression which really fits in well with that. Yeah, it's real good fun. And then like keeping it that simplistic, and then just placing him in real life. So like nothing else in his design draws from the banana except the skin, and that didn't make it sort of. That meant it was weak in that sense for what we were looking for, but it's very amusing for the context it's in. So yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, for the main reason, I would actually just make sure that if I had any like feedback to give, mainly just watching out for, since this is more of a cartoony style and I can't relate to it as much. I need to be careful what sort of feedback I'm gonna give. But I would mainly focus on making sure that you're kind of pushing and pulling on the shapes a bit more, and perhaps actually focus on gesture. That could actually really help, especially when you're dealing with cartoons.
Yeah,
because in cartoons they really rely on a lot of that.
Because I think you've got this really nice bend in the face from the banana. I think you need to see that same bend in things like the body, like the torso, the legs. Whereas the rest of him feels quite normal in a sense. It doesn't draw from that swoopy shape. And I think if you had it use that shape and have it repeat within the character, it would be quite a bit more interesting and more dynamic because of it.
Yeah. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to get a cup of coffee.
Cool. See you in a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, I got this really cute one. The gooseberry. Yeah, so this is adorable. And it was very difficult to say goodbye to because it's just so cute. My main critique is that basically from the head up, I think it's wonderful, and I love the use of the shape. It's like a very abstract shape, but it feels purposeful in its use. But the lower body, I think, lacks form. The legs and the feet, they don't quite have enough repeating landmarks and things that really communicate their shape. And I'd say the same thing with the arms. Like, they're quite amorphous. They don't really communicate folds like a shirt. They're kind of puffy, but they don't also show the kind of like thin, crinkly texture that you've got in the headpiece. So I think just making sure that you keep those elements constant and like treating the material the same across the body would help a lot. And because this looks like a big overall, I think you need to give it the folds that a realistic overall would have, so that we understand what's going on a bit more clearly. But otherwise, it is adorable, and I really like the use of the headpiece. we've got the core. This is actually really cute. The little blueberry dog. Sort of like Matthias was saying before. It's really much more of a cartoony style, and I think that's really fun and difficult to feedback on, because I'm really unfamiliar with like what's important. But in this case, I think I would say his mouth isn't. It's not immediately clear that it's his mouth to me. Like, I think I get it because of the relationship with the eyes, but it may be that you've got this like constant back and forth between contrast, so that the mouth doesn't really stand out. What I'd like to see is having the face a bit more consistent in value, so that you can have like a dark shadow change that defines the form of the mouth. And then things like these leaves on top, like let me zoom in real quick. I wouldn't expect to see such dark shadow along the edge of this leaf. The whole of this shape looks like it's facing upwards, so I'd expect all of it to catch light. And then instead, I would expect this shadow underneath to cast down much further and be like a clear repetition of the same shape of that leaf casting across his forehead. So if you applied that, then I think it would make this more readable for its shape, and also distract less because there's less of this constant back and forth between light and dark. But otherwise, his proportions are really fun. Like, I like you've got a big length from top to bottom of his body, and then like a medium length for his arms, and then this short length for his legs. And that hierarchy of shapes, I think, works really well. And then the blueberry dog's just adorable. Yeah, really cute. Oh yeah, coconut shaman. Ace Willie, you said, sorry I didn't put mine as a permanent post on Insta, just on my timeline, and I tagged you. Does that mean it wasn't included? I'm pretty sure I made sure I opened the tagged ones. Quickly link it just in case. But because you can see in one of my updates, I said try and make sure you've put the hashtag on it, because it's important that like I can look through all of them, because I'd already noticed that some people had just tagged my name, but I'd looked at those as well. Coconut shaman. Yeah, this is really, really fun.
Back is the coconut shaman.
It's awesome, isn't it? There's a lot of really cool stuff. My main criticism would be distribution of shapes again. I think things feel sort of somewhat evenly sized in terms of how quickly they change from one material to another. What I'd like to see is like a clear focal point. So making sure that the face has the clearest contrasts within it, and then going a bit dark with these shadows underneath, so that they really remain the secondary read.
Yeah. Another thing is to use contrast as well. I don't know if you commented on that.
I basically just started when you came back, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I would say it's a fun idea.
Yeah.
And it's actually the first. I don't know. It's like a creature that utilizes mainly coconut as armor and weapon.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. And like just the coconut and the sort of link that people have with like witch doctors and stuff like that. It's a clear relationship, I feel. At least it feels like that to me. I feel like I understand the vibe of the character immediately. So yeah, it's really strong on that point. This beautiful boy. He's perfect.
Yeah. It's the strawberry dude, right?
Yes, this one's really fun. I'm really glad this was entered. And to be honest, there's actually like, at a very simplistic level, there's shape hierarchy in this, which is very appealing. Like if this the little spike on the top was just like a complete shape instead of what reads more as a line, feels like a complete leaf, then that'd be a really nice big, medium, small hierarchy of shape, because of how encompassing his cape is. And also using the seeds as stubble on the beard. This is almost like what we were talking about with the Kiwi surfer. Like by condensing the use of that detail into a single area, it's far more appealing. And then it slowly peters off and then turns to nothing at the top of the head.
Yeah,
It's actually a very appealing distribution of that detail.
I'm actually kind of impressed, considering it was made by an 8-year-old.
Yes, indeed. This must be the youngest entrant.
Potential future big brain artist here.
Big brain. Yeah, I think it's clearly a strawberry, even with its like weaker use of color, and that's largely a limitation of the medium. So, great job. I also love its message that the heroes don't have to win all the time. They're only human. Strawberry Man doesn't always win, says the artist. He sometimes gets beaten, just like we all do. I think it's great. Lovely, lovely stuff. Oh, Grenadier. So this hung around a lot because I have a real soft spot for it. I think the use of textures in this design is my favorite aspect of it. Probably just the contrast, like the strong contrast, and then the use of the what's it called? Like the pith, the connective tissue between the seeds.
Mm-hmm.
I love its use on the legs. Like the textures here are fantastic. Yeah. Basically, I want to do fan art of this character. That sort of sums up my thoughts about it. I think there's so much potential in the materials it's used. The only problem with materials I have is that it then becomes a little hard to read the distinguishing areas between aspects. So like, when does his arm bend? When does it turn into his hand versus the wrist versus the forearm? So like the wrist kind of like disappears, and then I don't know exactly where his shoulders are. This shoulder piece seems to sort of come down a lot further than it does on this side, and then the actual volume of his body isn't so clear. But yeah, I feel like for me it's one of my honorable mentions because I think its use of textures, I think it's really well done. Oh, it's the fourth. It's a fourth design by Chernobyl.
Interesting. This guy just won't stop, Billy.
Yeah, he just won't stop. No, it's great. Pineapple fawn. Interestingly, I don't get much pineapple from it. Even after the description. I think it's just because these feel like layered leaves almost, rather than the kind of consistent surface of the pineapple. But he is cool. I mean, like its distribution of weight. I think he's carrying like a giant hammer on his back. I like his little goat eyes as well. They're great.
But yeah, it is I mean, I gotta give it to him. He's using a lot of bold shapes, from large to medium, and then very, very small, tiny. For example, on the legs. And the arms.
Also, it's like he's listened to our feedback ahead of time. He's almost entirely blacked out the legs and the back, like we just said he should do in the first design.
Damn. Interesting.
Crazy.
Went back in time, Mr.
Suspicious.
Oh wow, this one's great.
Yeah, this dude's really cool. The use of varying line weight, I think, is really good. I think I just wanted to see it get a bit thinner in the middle, so that these shapes don't feel so separate, because this is supposed to be like his torso, and these are muscles rather than separate pieces that aren't actually connected. And I don't get that feeling from how thick the lines are. But otherwise, I think it's really, really cool. And also, he's got a little butt face.
It's got a butt face.
He's got a little butt face.
I really like I mean, even though the spikes can be a difficult thing to handle, because it can really easily take a lot of attention. But the funny thing is that he uses spikes as area of just noise that you kind of skim through over, and then he uses the yellow as an area of rest. And then the tertiary elements would be the white, would be in between the armor and such.
I think it's really cool. Just maybe, I mean, my personal preference would be to have more realistic lighting across the whole thing. So big car shadows coming down from these knee guards, and things like that. And that would really sort of emphasize their form as being present and in front. But I think his proportions are really cool. Yeah, nice one. Ah, yes. This like the old sort of, it feels like a turtle, but that's probably just because it kind of looks like its head's poking out from a shell.
You can actually see his face.
Yeah, exactly, and he's got his face within. The biggest problem would just be readability, because there's like this very large chunk of bright orange, orange and yellow. But I do like his design a lot, and it's really interesting to have a character which is hollow in the middle, essentially. Like he looks like a shell. Like his neck comes in, and then essentially he's like hollow in the back, and then slides out at the bottom. And I'm assuming he kind of slides around like a slug.
Yeah, I can actually see that once you say it. But that it is almost that fleshy bit of the underside that really makes it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, in terms of criticism, it's just there's too much. It's a very consistent level of detail amongst that fleshy bit, so it's very hard to distinguish what's important and what's not. And ideally, you would have some variation across that, so that it's clearer where you need to look at, and less distracting elsewhere. But it's a cool idea.
I think it could really benefit from actually pulling back on, like, trying to define a light source. So there, because I felt like somewhere when this person was painting this, they were focusing on light source coming from the bottom, and then they changed their mind when they were painting the top half.
Yeah, it feels like the light, but it's also kind of like this is providing its own light. It kind of feels like it's glowing. Anyway, I'm aware that we will need to potentially go a little faster. This lady has a bunch of personality. It's great. I think there's something about the proportions of the face that I don't find particularly appealing. It might be because of how wide the mouth is. But she has a clear personality, and it uses the elements of this fruit well. I just don't think it captures, because I got raspberry from the leaves, but the actual skin itself, I was hoping I'd see some of that, like the bulbous shape, the repeated bulb, like the little juice pockets. Because at the moment her head kind of looks more like a cherry shape.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, to be honest, this one was a really close call for me, because I really liked the user design in this one. It was actually kind of outside the box. But yeah, I agree. The cherry doesn't quite read out that clearly for me.
Because it's raspberry, and these are like the small pockets of that raspberry texture. But here they look like they would communicate blackberries, and then here I think it's too small, and it doesn't read as if it's defining what the overall design is coming from. It just feels like a surface texture sort of replacement. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I don't think it has enough prominence within the design to communicate that that's the bit you should be looking at for working out what fruit it's based off of. Anyway, very cool.
I think we need to speed up, because there's a lot.
The fig monster. This is great and creepy. The use of the fleshy stuff inside the mouth is just it's horrifying. It's great. It is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Focus on making sure that you define the forms, and make sure that you have a consistent light source throughout.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. But I like that it's eating the fruit fly that's come to eat it. This is really fun. I think the main problem is the arms aren't quite visible enough. It's not clear where they're coming through. Like, I'd expect to see a cut line along this edge where this arm overlaps. But otherwise, the flattened and drawn out orange for the top, I think, is really fun. And yeah, the leaf broom is good.
Yeah, readability is a big one here as well. Making sure that you separate
some of the limbs from each other. And folds is a big thing. It's a tricky thing to get right, but if you draw folds in the future, make sure that you study folds from real life and see how they actually
Yeah.
how they interact with each other,
so we can understand what's happening underneath. This lady's really strong. It was sort of like a tough one to judge. I think it does everything very, very well. There's very little I can criticize about it. Perhaps just that if you weren't told that this was a fruit person, I don't think you'd have reason to believe that this was a fruit texture. Like, it almost feels like she's just inspired by the shape of a star. So getting in some of that like fleshy fruit feel, I think is what's needed here.
Yeah, technically, and design wise in its own right is actually quite good. But yeah, I agree with what Thomas says.
It's really strong with its shape distribution and stuff, and attitude. I love that.
I see it being used in a professional animation.
Yeah, it totally feels like it could be a design from what was it? I said it looked like a gem person from Steven Universe. That's it. Yeah. This is really cute. The only thing I'd say here is you've started to put some soft shading in, and you need to really commit to that if you're going to use realistic lighting. So making sure that like you've got like the reference image to the side, just making sure you've got like consistent gradients of color that define the form. So at the moment you have like this tiniest indication of shadow at the bottom and then almost more shadow at the top. It's basically very confusing where the lighting's coming from. So that's the main thing. But proportions and designs is adorable.
Yeah, that's how you say. Interesting. Small body, big head.
Yeah.
Uses that classical cute feel.
Yeah. This is really fun. The ash versus the dead fruit. This is the other one with rotten fruit. And I think it's a really fun idea. Unfortunately, we can't see much of the banana character, and like readability is a difficult one because of contrast. But I like the scenario that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The main thing is just pick a light source and make sure you stick to it so it's easy to read the characters, and then think about how the silhouettes of the characters can pop out on their background so that they don't compete for your attention so much.
The thing I would do here is, for example, very easy to change is just you see a lot of these cloudy shadows speckled around, and just making sure that you don't go softly with an airbrush everywhere, making sure that you actually have a place where you put the shadows and where the light's coming from. Yeah. Or what you could do is that you can go for a graphical effect, and I think this could have worked there too.
Yeah, graphical would probably work out better. In general, try not to use the airbrush for shadows. That's a good rule of thumb. Only if it's like describing the very large forms of something. Like this, for example, like there's like a gradient going off towards the edge. That's something you might use the airbrush for. But then as soon as you start trying to put details in, stop using the airbrush because it doesn't communicate cast shadows at all.
Yeah.
I think this lady, there's too much bright color all at once, and so it's very sort of confusing. And in fact, the details of her face almost get lost; they get drowned underneath this bright pink. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't see enough of the shape of the flesh of the mangosteen here. Like this. If these were more clearly defined and separate, I think I would understand the mangosteen influence. But at the moment, I don't really, especially since you've made such a big emphasis of this sort of lighter pink color, which doesn't really exist in the original fruit. So if this was all like the pale white of the mangosteen flesh, it would make more sense. Or if it was all dark, like the skin of the mangosteen, then I would understand where it's coming from a bit more clearly. I love the content look on his face, like he's just eating a ton of stuff. The prickly pear, I'm not really that familiar with what prickly pears look like, but yeah, he's lacking a bit of sort of the real anatomy influence. So like if you made these limbs draw from real human anatomy a little bit more, and I think they'd look a bit more structured.
The prickly pear is a type of cactus, actually.
Oh, but it bears fruit.
I think so.
Yeah, it bears the prickly pears as fruit, I think.
I think from what I'm noticing with the prickly pear is that it has mainly green and this purple red and hints of yellow and sometimes even that sort of beige cream.
Yeah.
But
which I think has been represented fairly well.
I think I would have actually. It's very hard to understand that this is a form of, this is prickly pear, and I think if you've actually added more of that cactus elements, I know that you've added the cactus elements, for example, on top of the head. But I think it would have been more obvious in this case. For example, replacing that cream arm and legs and replacing that with something with green, and having that cream come in somewhere else of the body.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem to be that strong in that type of plant, anyhow.
Yeah. So yeah, and then it's just a consistent lighting. Ideally, have it from above and make sure that your forms like have that light wrap around it.
Yeah.
Dragon fruit, it's adorable. That's mine. This is Matthias's. It's just so good. Yeah, I love it. All right. I was hoping someone would do this fruit. I can't remember what it's called. It's the guarana. That's it. It's the one that looks like it has eyes that are staring at you. So I was like, someone must use this and obviously turn those eyes into real ones.
Dude, that's super cool. I haven't actually.
Have you not seen it?
I think I would have made something out of that. Damn.
Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's perfect for like a big creepy monster. My criticism would just be, I think, like you've done it pretty well in that you've got big eye in the middle and then some smaller ones above. Possibly just like another round of smaller ones again, so that you get this nice relationship. Otherwise, just be sort of careful where you place the ones that you've got on top, because at the moment they're not symmetrical down the middle. They don't really communicate much in the way of shape overall. And I think that imbalances the character, because otherwise I think the relationship between his two arms and legs, that looks pretty strong.
Yep, okay.
But yeah.
All right.
Oh, a cute shy little blueberry. I think it's really sweet. I'd say it's mostly lighting and render that makes it unclear. Like this arm doesn't really pop out particularly well, and I think you could go with a deeper blue in her skin color to make it stand out. But blueberries often have this chalky white appearance, and I think you've captured that really nicely. So yeah, I think she's really cute.
I think if you even wanted to push this character's, push the gesture of this character, the cape can really enforce a sense of movement, especially if you're moving a certain direction. So if she's moving forward, you can have the cape sort of, flowing in the air and have almost like an arrow effect, and you can see the overlap of the underside and the cape from above as well. And that's just a fun way to play around with gesture, where you can just get away with it without making a whole lot of sense, but to just enforce a certain type of movement, because here the cape is just laying flat and it's not essentially enforcing any type of gesture. It's just laying there.
The little ones around the bottom are really cute. All right, next. I think this pops up again in rendered form. If it doesn't, I'll make sure I come back to it, but I'll
open it up and make sure.
Oh, actually, of course, I can just go on that page. That's easier. Oh, it doesn't. I must be thinking of a different one. Okay. In which case, I think it has a lot of potential. The problem I foresee is that there's too much detail, like in places that aren't important. But if you render it and make sure you don't put constant like bright white highlights on these areas, then I think you can make sure that you look at the face and nothing else. So it has that like classic Disney villain vibe, which is cool.
Do you have any more comments on this?
Not really. I'd like to see it finished, but they haven't colored it, so it's cool though. I think you get a great sense of character and motion in it. All right.
The reason before we want to move on, there was a person in the comment section that was asking, "Hi, I have a question. I really appreciate the critique I already got, and I will take it into hand. But I saw you guys went a bit quiet when doing my character critique. I was wondering, is it because my design was a bit boring or not very entertaining, etc.? Sorry if this sounds a bit pushy or needy, and that's fine, man. Just tell us which one it was, and then we'll take
It was this. I remember. I think it's because it's currently not got enough interest. I think it's because
right.
I want to see it with more contrast across, and until it's got more contrast across in terms of like its colors and materials, I would say it's hard to critique in a sense because I can't comment on the balance between those elements. Because otherwise, I think it's like it's very strong in many regards. I really like the relationship between the head and the hair. Like
I think
go for it.
if I can like chime in and say that I would have liked to see, you know, it's all looks very samey all throughout, and I would have liked to see at least as another element or another material, or if not another material, that you keep the same sort of same almost monochromatic vibe, that you have a different shape which pushes it forward. Because the only thing that really makes me go, wow, this is quite cool, is the hair. And I think the hair is one thing that really got me interested, as well as the glasses, which is also
yeah. But like the glasses are the only change in material, so
yeah, that's the only small thing. So if you can go like change it up and push the either shapes forward, or you use a different material, like you have the glasses, like you add maybe like a bunch more of that, something to add interest to it, because it's very samey.
Yeah, but otherwise, in terms of us sort of potentially being more quiet, I think it's because there's not so much to critique. Because anatomy-wise, I think it looks very strong, and like I like the sort of relaxed pose with the morning coffee. It makes sense.
Yeah, so technically it works, but
it almost looks more like a sketch, like in that it feels like line art that hasn't been filled in because it doesn't have enough contrast in its values.
Well, yeah, essentially.
Yeah, the mangosteen. I think this is really strong with its render. I didn't get mangosteen from it immediately, but looking at the fruit, like I really get it from this top piece. I think it just needs to like relate to the character a bit more. Like I think I have eaten mangosteen, and it's like a fairly mild sweet thing. So I didn't get the connection to this kind of very creepy looking evil dude. And it's also got that very bulbous shape design in general. Like the mangosteen's round, and then within it, it's got multiple sort of these big rounded bulbous forms that I don't think come through in the design. So I think that was the main disconnect for me. But otherwise, like I really like the render and the use of materials. What do you think it is?
Sorry, I was actually reading through the comments. I didn't actually hear.
Oh, in which case I can finish up. But yeah, that's my main thing. I like the creepy, like he's eaten something with red juice. Now it's dripping out of his mouth. I think really it's very strong in a lot of regards. It's just I don't think it relates to mangosteen enough in its shape design.
Yeah, back to this one. I actually agree with what you say there, Thomas. And I'm actually really impressed with the use of texture. Like, pat on the back. I think technically it's quite strong. But again, I think it suffers a little bit the same thing from what George's arts is, with the
sort of consistent material across. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see something with a silhouette or something else popping out more.
This dude, I think you've got too much competition between the colors. They're too bright at the same time. But otherwise, I think it makes a lot of sense. You've got tough skin as armor on the outside, and then soft flesh on the inside. Perhaps a third sort of main color instead of going for this slightly turquoisey blue. You could have gone for the white that appears just under the skin. And then I find the face sort of odd. I don't think it captures a particularly strong expression. And I'm not sure what the eyes are. Maybe they're like an arrangement of seeds.
Yeah, it looks like it.
But yeah. But otherwise, there's a couple of perspective things where like this shoulder seems to sort of be drooping a bit more than the other side. But I like his stance. Like he feels big and weighty, like a watermelon. So that suits it, and that suits it pretty well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think functionality of the armor is kind of important here. I know it's a fruit person, and it's not really a big deal. Going back to the watermelon guy, right? Is that he not a lot of the armor makes a whole lot of sense. It just kind of plays on top. But again, it's a fruit person, so you can get away with a lot of like functionality. I think a lot of shapes doesn't quite exactly make sense. So
yeah,
making sure that things wrap around properly, and you basically try and convince people that this thing can actually exist.
Yeah. All right, we've got to be speedy. Lime guy, this is really fun. For people with lime life. Yeah, I think he's really fun, but I think it lacks a bit of contrast across the character. Like his legs are really like the forms of his thighs. I find his feet kind of confusing, but they're an entertaining end to them. And I think we just need to be a bit more bold with your use of shadow so that things in the face read. And yeah. And like the contrast in like the folds of his jacket and stuff are a bit clearer, especially from a distance.
Mm-hmm. The circular element with the lime, there's not a whole lot of that happening. It would be cool to have either that stacked on top of each other, or have probably on his forearm or on his legs or something, just to repeat that shape, because I think that one shows a lot of the 3-dimension of the character and can really make for a cool character design.
Yeah. I just like his powdered face. It's really fun. This dude feels really strong. I think we were just talking about functionality in armor, and because this is also a watermelon, this feels more functional because you can see the joints where they need to have joints, and then they've just chosen to remove armor in like the gauntlets and things because it may just get in the way.
Yeah.
So I think it makes more sense. Yeah, it's cool. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think functionality it works better. If I have to give any constructive criticism, it's gesture and making sure the forearm actually reads relatively okay, but the shapes are a little bit bland. So seeing certain shapes being pushed more than others would be interesting, and have the gesture pushed as well.
And variation between the size of those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have Kiwi Man next. I have a soft spot for this guy as well. I really like his vibe. He's cool. I think my main issue would just be with like communicating the size of these forms. Like I think the middle of his body works really well, and then the arms and legs feel a bit weaker in comparison, with not really displaying their form as well. But for me, he was very close. Actually, the background I think detracts from him, but luckily we weren't judging the background, so I didn't bring it into I didn't factor it in. I think the background's really distracting because I don't really know where this like bright pink stuff's coming from, but his silhouette and the clarity of like exactly every part of his design, and like you've lengthened the fluff from the outside of the kiwi. I think it's really good. For me, it was very close. It was a close call before I had to say goodbye to it.
Yeah, I would say the same too. It was tricky to figure this one out, and it almost came down to like personal taste to a certain degree. I think the main thing that that kind of you picked on some of the same things that I didn't quite like as much, and that's the same with the arms and the legs. But the elements that he has around the collar, such as that the white stripes and with the seeds, are very, very cool. And as well as that hair hat is also really cool with the vertical face.
Yeah.
So,
and like the use of the constant width of the hat going down through the cape, it's really strong. This was close. I like this one a lot. This will come to you later because this is the lineup, but there's a rendered version later. Another apple core. I think it's a really lovely use of it. My main issue would just be it's lacking a bit of detail in that anatomy, and if you pushed it a little bit further, I think it would have been lovely. But the face at the moment, in its simplicity, is gorgeous. I really like it.
I
think it's lovely. So really good idea, and you've actually got this like soft, slightly translucent glow very well. So
I think the main feedback I would give is utilize textures a little bit more often and play around with your shapes.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's a really cool idea. Again, another strong one for its idea, and I think very close with its execution.
Like, for example, you could even make the torso longer, for example, to give a bit of contrast, because the distance from her legs to her torso and up to the head was getting very much the same.
Or the opposite and go for the longer legs, but it needs to balance it out somehow.
Yeah.
This is awesome, and it's not really the background that it has. It's really just the pose that makes it feel so dynamic, and like it's such an interesting image. I do love to see the little people fighting in the background, but yeah, that wasn't something we could factor in the images. And we just found that like the use of the watermelon armor around the body felt a little haphazard. Again, I think it's just the places that you've chosen to put it in and the shapes of those. There's not too much variation between them, and they don't communicate their purpose particularly well.
Yeah, the thing that I almost forgot about when I was looking at this was like, oh wow, this is so cool, and then I had to click in my head and say, no wait, this is we're looking at character design, not an illustration or splash shot. And I feel like the cool pose, and it gives us a sense of idea of who the character is and what they're about, and they're a fighter, and they're very well armored. But as what we discussed earlier, that the shapes on or at least the way the armor is placed, feels a bit random. It's a bit hard to read in some places, and unfortunately, it's also a consequence of the lighting that's kind of hiding it. But though the lighting is not wrong, it's just hiding a lot of the things that we would have liked to see more of.
So yeah, really cool. We really liked it. And the little glint on the weapon is great. Yeah, so very strong. It just, we need a little more clarity in like where you choose to put shapes, so they make a bit more sense. This guy is also really close because I think it's very strong. It's simple and it works. There's just like a sort of lack of nuance in the way that the limbs and stuff use the avocado as inspiration.
Yeah. I thought it was fun because it must have been really tricky to try and balance all of them are about, you have his weapon, and then you have the guy itself, and then you have the shield, and they're all roughly about the same size, but you still manage to balance it somehow because they all interact with each other. Now, I would have still opted for, changing some of the sizes, like either make the shield much larger than himself or something like that, and make the weapon smaller, just so that I don't take all of the attention. And the simplicity works, but I think it's also one of its weaknesses. So you have for example, this strap on the shield. I would have liked to see the whole thing just curve around, and where it's actually more like a material as a part of the what's it called again? I have a blank mind.
So the fruit, avocado.
Avocado, exactly. So like,
there we go.
I'd like to see the whole thing wrap around the avocado and have the skin be a part of that strap, for example. That's just like one thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's mainly one of my comments. The lighting and rendering is strong.
Yeah, and I love the expression. It's great. Oh, I got the cute little. I thought these were blueberries at first, but they're something more specific. I can't remember what it was. What did they say it was?
Califate?
Kyoki or something? Or Califate? Oh, I think it was Califate, yeah. They're little, they have this like paler, chalky skin, which I think they've done really well here. Yeah, they're really cute. I like them. I like how you've put them in context, and like this looks like the birthing ground. The only problem is that there's very little to their design. I think they're just quite simplistic, but it's a great idea.
I think this is one of those things where it comes into like the story. So the characters by themselves aren't that interesting, but the way that they are put into this world and story-wise and functionality, I suppose, is really, really strong. I mean, in the context of what's happening right here, it's not exactly like showcasing the character. I guess it more showcases them in their habitat and how they interact with the world, which is cool because that's what you should sometimes do in a character design to sort of explain what's going on.
And it often makes it more engaging too.
Exactly, but everything else, it lacks on everything else. But story-wise and functionality, it is actually very interesting.
Yeah.
So just add something more to it.
These two pop up later on, so we'll skip to this lady. Yeah, she's really fun. I think you get an immediate sense of her character. I also like the inclusion of the fly again, and great use of the textures throughout, especially the pineapple skin. I think this might be my favorite pineapple skin of all the entries. Like, I think the way you've simplified it here, but paid attention to the details in the real fruit, I think it's really nice.
Mm-hmm. My main criticism here would be the vertical distance between her whole body, like from her body and her face and her hair, is exactly, or almost feels like the exact same distance from the bottom to the top of the dress. And in a weird way, in my mind, I don't know if you see this, but it almost feels like they're separated.
Yeah, she kind of looks like she's on top of a bed or something, or like a fancy couch. There's a strange disconnect, and also because it happens at the halfway mark, which would be different if you had different lengths between the top and the bottom. Because it happens at the halfway mark, something kind of like cuts the image in the middle, down the middle for me, especially when you've got most of the darker colors in the bottom, and then the top of our body is very light. So the whole image feels like it's sliced in half, and it sort of separates the two. So some larger or heavier shapes in the upper body, and a bit more dark, rich colors, probably in the hair, I think would be the best place to put it, so that it can balance out the stuff going on below. I've got the passion fruit man. This is another great, like, creepy one. He's like the boogeyman from Nightmare Before Christmas, leaking all the writhing insects. Yeah, I think it's a really fun idea, and it's really creepy. The problem would just be anatomy, really. I think it looks like it's drawing from some human anatomy, but not enough, which makes it feel a bit amorphous, and like there's little that you can sort of latch onto and understand.
Yeah, I would agree.
But the texture of the seeds coming out, I think, is really cool.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is to make sure that you have a sense of form. Everything is very, very rounded, and that can work, but a lot of like the rounded things feel very samey, and there isn't like a lot of gravity, which feels like it's pulling on anything. It feels like it's almost broken.
We need some contrast between, but yeah, the use of these highlights and the way they wrap around and stuff, that's really nice.
Yeah.
It's another. I've forgotten the name already. So this must be another name for it. The golden berry. It's the word syphilis is what coming to mind, but it's not that. That's an STI. Physalis. It's the physalis. Yeah, I think it's really cute. Structurally, it's just a bit wonky in places, because like I want to see more connection between like the position of the knees and stuff like that. Otherwise, I think it's really sweet. Like the positioning of the elements from the original fruit, and like the distribution of shapes is quite nice too.
I think this is a great example of where you can actually. This is an example of a person that holds back on shapes, or holds back on shape variation, because this is an example where you can make the cape really, really large, for example, and where you keep the head, maybe change the. I mean, in this case, I want to make the head maybe rounder, and maybe push the. For example, I don't know, my human anatomy skills are kind of like coming in front of me here, but like pushing the cranium up the top back up again, for example, and maybe pushing the stalk out so it gets pushed out more, for example.
Because generally what you want to do is you want to look for the places in the fruit which would match that of a human anatomy. And in this case, if the fruit is wider at the top and smaller at the bottom, then flip it round so that, like the same way that our head is the widest from front to back at the top of the head, and then it shrinks slightly when it goes into the neck, then it would match what we expect in anatomy a bit more. So and then trying to apply that to the rest of it. But I think there's a lot of really cool use of the design in here. Maybe just don't go quite as thin on the limbs either, because there's sort of an inconsistent thinning of the limbs throughout, and it makes them lose a lot of their presence and weight. All right. Oh yeah, this is a pair, isn't it? It's like the golden speckly pairs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is this utilizing more of the like the attire,
Mm.
kind of like costume?
Is that little lizard thing? Is that like a pervy little lizard thing that's looking up a skirt?
Yeah, I suppose it is. He's probably a fruit. He eats fruit. He's an
Oh
eater.
no. No, this one's cool, but I think in terms of what we were sort of looking for the use of the fruit throughout, I think it's a very simplistic translation from the pear shape to the dress, and then there's not much more that communicates pear within it. I like the stylized leaf into the hair, but again, it doesn't communicate much more about the pear itself.
I'd say this could benefit from a lot more gesture and pushing that energy out. So like,
she's straight up and down, isn't she? And she needs to have like either the chest forward or the hips forward or something like that to break it up.
Yeah. So the important thing here about when you're doing a character design is that how the person is, or how the character is going to stand, and what that stance is supposed to convey to whoever is viewing it. So people aren't just like standing straight up and down. It's not quite natural for the human body to do that. So like here, you can see her grabbing her dress, and then she's just kind of standing and smiling. And it's a bit hard for people to understand what she's trying to tell us.
Yeah.
But if she had like, maybe she's very confident of herself. So she was putting her hand on her hip and leaning her hip, or leaning one part of her body to one side, and then, lifting her skirt a little bit up.
Yeah, because like at the moment it looks like she's going for a seductive look, but then the rest of her pose doesn't support that.
Yeah. I think.
All right. So we got to keep it fairly quick.
Yes, I like to give comments, but
more Physalis. This is really cool because of that transparency and the outer shell of the Physalis. I think you've utilized it really well. I think you just need to be clearer with where the limbs are. It's hard to see the structure underneath that outer sheath. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that's the same thing as well. And the silhouette's a bit. I mean, actually maintains silhouette quite well, but yeah, the shapes are a bit hard to read in some places. Yeah. I think you can even made it more like left out a few of the lights and made it more what's the word I'm looking for? Abstract isn't the word I'm looking for, but you could just like have one large plane of just like one value in some areas, instead of having lots of gradients.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Here we have sugar apple. Actually, I'm not sure I see sugar apple in it. If anything, I immediately think something like raspberry, and that's because of the shapes in here. Because I think the sugar apple has been used for the green of her skin, but the textures don't necessarily support it in the same way. Otherwise, it's cute. But yeah, in terms of like you get purple sugar apples. Maybe it was. I guess it's really drawing from this.
Yeah, but I think the main thing I would look out for is just really utilize some more of those design elements throughout. It's a very, very simple piece. And it's a bit hard to critique that because I'm not.
Yeah, I think simplicity is the main detractor because there's little attention to sort of the small, finer details, I suppose, in the shape design. But I see you're using like a constant width of line as well. I think that's to your detriment in this case.
So there's two things. Line weight and then remove the texture, and then I think you'll be able to read character in a much different light.
Yeah, the inclusion of the clavicles is really nice, but they feel too heavy compared to other things because you've used the same line weight. So I would basically start introducing line weight variation. God damn.
How much time do we have left, by the way? I think some people are getting a little bit concerned we don't have enough time.
We're gonna do things at 7, aren't we? I think we basically need to end at 10 to 7 or something.
All right. Well, we have a bit of time, so it should be good.
We just need to. We'll do it. We'll do it a lot faster.
all right.
Or we could come back and do a different session on a different day
Yeah, for sure. If we need to, we can do it
if we need to.
tomorrow even. Hell.
Okay. Anyway,
Continue.
I think this uses the materials very well, and I like the idea. Drag in fruit.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
fruit in drag.
I like the use of where you make straight lines and curved lines to your benefit. Such as, for example, you have the curves of the butt and you have the curves of the shoulder, but then you have the straight lines of the head and the hair, and even down the angle of the legs. So that's really cool.
Here, I think it's just a render. Rendering the forms more realistically will give you a better sense of the volume of the body.
Yeah.
This dude. I love his face, but it's very hard to read from a distance. I think that's my main critique. And the other thing would be this exposure of the inside of the fruit makes sense as when you've like cut a fruit in half, but the way that this has been applied to his body, it kind of looks like it's just wrapping around on the outer surface. So I don't really get a sense of why that patterning is exposed. But otherwise, I think there's a lot of really good usage of that material.
The thing is that he's very bulbous and that he's that type of character, but I think he gets so bulbous to the point where it's working against his character design. So what do you think he should be doing?
So it's like repetition of the sort of same type of shapes, I think. I'm not sure. It kind of like everything kind of sags down a bit too much, I think. And so it doesn't feel particularly structural.
Yeah, I think having a sense of structure and having, at this point, I would love to do like a little overpaint, but essentially you need to pull back a little bit and go a little bit more, have a little bit more human realistic proportions. And
I think it needs more influence from real human anatomy. This is cute. I see this as like a stationary enemy that's going to be constantly bombarding you with stuff in like a Mario game or something.
Totally.
Yeah, he's cute.
Fascinating. So, so the main thing here is that, for example, like the shoulder pad is kind of working against him here. That's the thing. He's exposing his flesh in the open almost.
It doesn't make sense to. You've like broken the rule of flesh on the inside, skin on the outside with the shoulder pad. But otherwise, like having the seeds stick in as like a larger element, I think that's cool. It's just you need to be more consistent with that kind of like what material is used for what.
Yeah.
Another this. Yeah, this is also. Oh, is it? Yeah, it is. Really cool. Again, it's using the transparency. I think that works really well, and there's a really nice dense detail in here. It's very cool. I think the main thing is just being clearer where the limbs are, so that you can sort of read what's happening in the body a bit more.
Yeah, I would agree. This one's actually quite strong. So good job. This one's fun.
Yeah, I really like him.
I think the design of this one is quite clever. I think just the proportions feels a bit off. Yeah,
and I really like because this is how I eat my mangoes. I slice them and then scoop out chunk by chunk. It's cool. Weirdo. And I like he feels pretty balanced despite having a very asymmetrical design. But I think he's strong.
Yeah, just have a bit more structure and watch out for your proportions.
Yeah, and maybe like a tertiary color would be nice. This dude has the best banana head I've seen.
Yeah, I really like the textures on the face.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. And that's the thing. The top half looks really structural and strong, and then I think it just loses some of that in the bottom half. Mostly a perspective thing, and like making sure that you're placing the knees feel like they're at different heights, things like that. But I do love his banana shoes. Like, I think it's really strong. There's just like small lighting and perspective elements that I'd want to refine.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, great job with that banana hair coming over the top. I think that's lovely.
Yeah.
This tomato, I think there's a lot of really cool things, but the problem is it doesn't have the right bright red that I'd expect from a tomato. So it was a while before I realized what it was supposed to be, and the thing that gave it away was then this cross section here, which is actually, it's very nice, but I don't get tomato from it immediately. What do you think?
No, yeah, I can get that. It feels a bit more, but I do like more realistic colors, and this is kind of like an example of a person who wanted to push it to a little bit more realism.
Yeah, it's got like a subdued feel.
Yeah, exactly. So the biggest feel, or the biggest thing that kind of pushes me back from this character is the kind of like functionality, and as well as it just feels unfinished. It's a bit hard to read what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's those two main points.
All right, we can finally get to this. Generally, Matthias, you can take it. I'll just sit back.
With this one? Is that the troll one?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I thought that this one was quite cool. For example, like the spindly looking like lines on for example, on the hair. It's not often something that I see in character design. It's quite usually people really like to go for like tapering shapes, and shapes that are usually quite thick and bulbous and chunky. But this one is an example where it uses a lot of the repeating lines. A good example of this is one of my favorite artists, Israel Lira, who uses a lot of these like, lines. And just to, like move forward here now, it reminds me a lot of like trolls from Norwegian fairy tale stories that used to be read to me, and they looked a lot like this. So this one touched on my childhood a little bit for some reason. But yeah, it looked nice.
Yeah, for me, I really like it. I think it's just the design of the eyes that I'm not so keen on. Yeah. But it's a great use of the materials across. Another banana dude. This one works in its simplicity. It's sort of odd that he's holding a fork, because I get that bananas are food, but you don't eat bananas with with a fork. Anyway, I think he's very fun, simplistic, but
he's running away from the kitchen, man.
Yeah, he's taken the fork away, so they can't eat him.
I think this is a very good example of a person that has a good idea of shape. Then they really know how to use pleasing shapes in the most simplest way.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I think is holding this character back is perhaps the lines are a bit scratchy, and I think it could really benefit from a bit of rendering. And even if you wanted to, though I know that this character really focuses on simplicity, you could have added a new element in there.
Yeah,
perhaps.
I think that's all it needs. Like maybe the leaf from the plant could be used as something like a cape, or just something that would add to like interest in the design. Give it a secondary material.
Yeah.
Look at these cute little faces in the staff. Yeah, this one's really cool. I think there's potentially a problem with detail density and like having too much noise in certain areas. So it's hard to sort of, like, my eye never really gets led up to his actual face. But then I do like how you've sort of cut this shape in the top to almost look like a giant eye with the iris in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I would agree.
The main thing would be distribution of detail. So pulling back on some of the contrast. I don't think you necessarily need to remove elements from the design. Just need to make sure that when you render it, like, this is the area that gets the most contrast, and the rest can be kind of subdued a little bit, so it doesn't compete so much. But the little faces in this staff is great.
Mm-hmm. And the lighting is really, really strong. Like, good work in lighting.
Yeah. And this is another one. In fact, these two characters feel quite similar because they have like a fairly realistic humanoid proportions as a base. And I think I have pretty much the same response to this. There's areas which are too dense, and they're harder to read because of that. Like, I really like the contrast between these large shapes in the skirt compared to shapes in the upper body, but these smaller panels of metal armor, they're sort of similarly sized shapes, and they all have a lot of contrast on them, so they detract quite a bit. And I'd say that it's difficult to make the leap from soft fruit stuff to metal armor. It's still something which I'm unsure whether it works or not. What do you think?
Well, it honestly comes down to how you actually apply it. Honestly, I mean, both way can work.
Yeah.
If you know how to do it, but I would say one is more difficult than the other.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, I would agree with the metal part is that it's very hard to implement that. And if you were really stubborn and really wanted to have the metal, I would actually apply more metal throughout the piece, but have it like kind of similar to how with the skirt, where it's actually a larger area.
I think you need variation in the shapes of the metal more. Yeah. But otherwise, the way that you've united the values in the shadow under the skirt, I think, is a really good approach that you should apply to things like underneath this ledge here, and combining some of those and removing some of those highlights so that it's just a little less distracting. Because the eye is one of the faintest things in the piece, even though being the face, I imagine it really should be the place that I want to come and look at. Otherwise, banana sword is great.
Yeah, looking lovely. Great
banana sword. This is an octopus. I don't think this fits. All right. The Great Juice Wars. I like the backstory here. Yeah, it's good fun. I'm not sure which character would be the one that you'd count as like your design, but I like the idea of a person just amalgamating fruit together. He can be the fruit salad, this like evil scourge that just assimilates people.
This fits well with something that like you see on Instagram comics or something like that, and I have some quirky comments. I mean, this is perfect for that.
Yeah,
I think this benefits from being sort of self-satirical.
Yeah, exactly. And I enjoyed reading the story too. That was good fun. And being a character that's made of many smaller ones, it's hard to then critique like sort of proportions and stuff. But it's a very fun idea. The Grapius Kingdom and the Aplus Knights. Many Grapius died, and the numbers have never managed to increase properly since. So sad. Yeah, it's great. I love the little screaming faces. Oh, I had a soft spot for this one. I really like the proportions throughout. I just love his derpy little face. Yeah, I had a hard time letting go of him.
Yeah, the attachment of the leaves on his waist, well, it doesn't feel like they're actually attached to each other at all, and it's feel like they're sitting on there. And there isn't a lot of that element going. It's just that skirt and a little bit of the leaves and the knife. And I would have liked to see some more of those leaves elsewhere in the design. And where else would I put the? I mean, it's such an interesting character. I find it kind of hard to sit and figure out what I would do differently.
Yeah, same. And generally, I like things with thin waists. I guess that's maybe why I really like the proportions throughout it. It's like it's what I do in my designs.
It was a bold decision to have a hunchback like that, but I feel when he's like popping out of that part, it's a bit odd. So maybe have even a cutout. Watch out for your axis. He feels like he's falling backwards, so pushing him forward and making sure that the lighting reads well. I think this image will look a lot better.
But I do like his design a lot. That milk stomach connecting the hips and torso is a very good detail. Yeah. I do like his milk stomach. This lady, I find it very appealing, like at first glance, but the problem is the sort of chaotic design within it, and it doesn't immediately communicate watermelon to me, unfortunately.
It was a bold decision to try and divert from the original, I guess, prompt, but I think the design, like to give you a pat on the back, I think the design of these are actually quite cool, and I actually really enjoy looking through the images. But yeah, I agree with Thomas. Doesn't quite read as like a fruit person to me, and what it's really all about. It feels more like something that's like the Fire Nation from Avatar.
Because this is getting closer, where you've got the striations from the outside of the watermelon at the bottom, and then you've got the seeds in the top. So it's coming very close to communicating fruit, but. The one that you sort of come to, I don't think has enough of that. Like these dots could just be a symbol from within a world that has nothing to do with fruit. Otherwise, very cool. Yes, I think this is lovely.
Yeah.
ideally, just as like shape appeal, you would have variation between the size of the blueberries in the middle, and like giving them a bit more structure would help, because like there's no sense as to where her shoulders or hips are really, apart from where her limbs join. But I think the face is great, and the use of the bulbous blueberry nose.
I think the legs and the arms and the little leaves behind, it has a charm to it. It has kind of like children books feel.
Exactly, yeah. She feels from a fairy tale, and I really like that. Yeah. Distributing the contrast as well would help bring attention to the face, though. Hey, Banana Man. I like this because like you think of like banana skidding and slipping on a banana or whatever. It's really fun because it's using that idea of like going fast and slipping along the ground.
Yeah, it's a funny play, and I actually like the way that he's actually been cut and he's reusing, I guess, parts of himself as
yeah, slices of his body.
Yeah.
Great expression on the face. I think just emphasize those transitions to green a bit more, and like the difference between the white of the inside of the banana and the yellow of the outside. So a bit more color contrast overall,
as well as the shape variation. So, for example, his body, his arms, and his legs are all the same shape, all the same size. I mean, So having one dominate over the other is probably better.
But there's a great flow, and I really like his face. Yeah. No, it's a cool one. I'm in the end. I'm surprised how many banana ones there were. Yes, here it is.
The boy, the legend.
Yeah, he's really fun. It's just hilarious. I had so much fun seeing this.
I was really considering this to be.
I was too. Like there's a really. It's got like a very solid presentation. Like nothing's out of place really. The things I would sort of criticize would just be areas that feel sort of too smooth in comparison to others. Like there's nice texture here, and then the back of his head kind of just smooths off and becomes a bit flat because of it. Same thing with his little legs down here, but yeah, he's so much fun. Thank you for creating this character.
Yeah, it's just fun. I don't have much to say. I mean, technically, it's quite strong. It's just something to do with the character design could have been pushed more.
That's great. It's great. This lady, yeah, we discussed this for quite a while. I think our consensus was that there's most of like the clothing, like the head and the body feels really strong, but then the anatomy of the limbs underneath sort of detracts from that, because it's very hard to see where things join. Like this upper arm feels very, very short, the shoulders here, and then this forearm feels very, very short if that's where the elbow is. So small things like this throughout, and I think you need to choose what color you want to be the brightest one, because I like how you've used orange throughout the design. I think it works really well, but then the blue competes with it. The blue is trying to be the important color because it's the brightest, and I think you should basically just desaturate that completely. Because otherwise,
red.
Yeah.
Red because you only have like the heart, for example.
Exactly. Then you could continue on from that that color inclusion, but her attitude is great.
Yeah, cute character.
Yeah. Good. This is awesome. What oh, it's an apricot, of course. Yeah, this is really fun. Like I like how you've left this edge soft because it gives you that fuzzy apricot feeling. And generally just like going for that big bulbous sort of Victorian dress style is really interesting. My only issue here would just be contrast, and like you've got some lighting and shadows like below the ruff at the top and then sort of below her arms, but you haven't continued that down to the underside of her dress. I think that's the most important thing.
I think the main thing that this person needs to focus on is occlusion shadows, which is where the lights cannot get in at all.
Yeah.
So like if you close your fingers, you see these lines, and that's where the light cannot go in. So making sure that you get those correctly, as well as having a light source so that you can actually see some cast shadows, because I can see that there are some years there would have been cast shadows, but there aren't any at all.
Yeah. But otherwise, like the shape proportions I think are cool, and then those work really well. And the inclusion of the flower from the apricot plant I think is a nice idea, a nice way to give variation to the top.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember the name of this fruit, but it's really cool. It's got those like long wedge-shaped things you kind of peel off a central stone. I think this communicates those very well, because you have this like this really bright color transition from lighter yellow to the deep red.
Mm-hmm. By the way, this is the challah fruit, if you wondered.
It's the challah fruit, that's it. Yeah. I think it's really cool. My main thing would be about the presentation, like the render of it, because you've got shadows that sort of, they appear not randomly, but they're more influenced by shapes that are nearby rather than any light source. And ideally, I just want to see a strong light source on this character, so that shadows like this would continue and wrap around the bottom of the arm. Things like that.
Yeah, it's very cool. I don't have any comments.
Yeah, but otherwise the shape variation, like the big muscles, thin legs, I think that works really well. And we know where to look because of all this these lines pointing in towards the face. Oh, this is cute. Yeah, she's really cute. I think a slightly stiff pose. Try and get like a gesture that runs throughout the entire pose.
Yeah.
But the peel, like the gently peeling away, spiraling of the skin, I think that's really nice. Bunch of really nice uses of the fruit in this design.
Yeah, I think just defining the shapes more, or defining not the shapes, but defining the edges more would have really helped this character.
Yeah. And I like that you've used that cross section of the orange, which is like the strongest visual point. You've used it like really strongly in the middle, and you've got it a couple of other times, almost like little emblems. I think it's a really strong use of it. They even got their own little coat of arms. That's great. Yeah, nice job. This must be mangosteen again. And the thing is, I actually get mangosteen from these shapes, like the pale internal chunks of the shape. And I think that's what's missed from a couple of previous mangosteen ones. Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
Yeah, same thing with this, with the presentation. I actually like the pose, and it gives us an idea of who this guy is. He's a warrior, and he's ready to defend his fruit world.
Yeah.
But what I would do is make sure that all the limbs feel a bit separate to themselves. So making sure that the person actually stands and all the limbs interact with each other and have a bit more weight to them would really, really help.
Yeah. Other than that, I think there's like some perspective things on the head, and maybe just sort of like drawing a bit more from anatomy again within the face to make it feel believable. But I do like a lot of what's going on here, especially like the use of the mangosteen striations to be like muscles in the leg. That's cool. Okay, we're back. We're back in it, boys. It's time. We got to this one, right? The pomegranate.
So I'm just going to look at your screen, and I'm not going to look at Instagram. So as I'm.
Oh yeah, look at the stream. Or I could share it with you, and you can get it more updated. But the stream should be fine.
You think the stream will be fine?
I reckon so.
All right, go for it.
Okay. This boy, I think he's pretty well balanced. I like the top heavy feel, and you've kind of got that in the body as well. And it slowly tapers down. There's possibly sort of even chunks of red throughout. Like I think you kind of want to make either the lower half dominant with red or the top half. And I think in this case, because the head relies so much on the pomegranate seed, you should keep that as the place where you have most red, and then maybe bring more of the green into the trousers. And that way, it just sort of, we get less of like a I don't know, an overall feel in the clothing, and it looks a bit more like I don't really know how to describe it, but I think it would be a nice balance in this case. But otherwise, the use of red as the dominant color works really well here. Green is an accent, and then you've got that like flesh underneath. I like the hand poses a lot, actually. Let's zoom in on those real quick.
I also really like
Oh.
the second row of arms under the. I don't know that they're coming out of the white bit.
Yeah, the
And
waist.
you have it's a nice contrast.
Yeah, I think this is cool. And it makes
More
sense.
variation.
Like there was a previous one which used that feeling of like this pith inside the pomegranate. It just encapsulates everything, and transferring that to the idea of having a bunch of hands which are constantly like grabbing at everything. It's a really nice transition of that, the feeling of that shape. My main criticism here would just be the face doesn't. The rest of this feels like it's really three-dimensional. You can kind of see the midline that goes down, but I don't quite have that with the face. It feels like it's shifted off to the right a little too far, and maybe that's because both of these lapel bits go in front of the chin, but it feels like his chin should be coming between these two. A fairly subtle thing there, but it's throwing me off slightly.
Yeah, I agree.
Then we have this. So yeah, I really like the subtlety with this. It's simple and like calm and quiet, and I think that really suits the samurai aesthetic. Also, question in the chat: have you decided on the winner yet? Yes. If you want to see, it should be in the VOD. It's the first thing we streamed. We streamed the winners, and now we're going through the rest of them.
Man, the whole thing lasted 4 hours. Jeez.
Yes, it did. But the winners are at the beginning of that, so it should be easy to find. Anyway, yes, the persimmon. It's hard to immediately know it's the persimmon. The thing that really communicates it for me would be the green leaves at the top and the stem. But it's a very simplistic fruit, so I think ultimately you've done a good job, especially keeping the cross section of the persimmon as a pattern across the clothing. Generally, I think a lot of this is very well considered. The weakest bit for me would just be his feet and how they plant on the ground. It sort of feels a bit floaty, and that could just be a shadow, a problem with the shadows. But compared to the sort of anatomical detail you've put in the hands, the feet feel very lacking. So my main advice here would just be to try and give those the same attention, and make them feel a bit more planted on the ground with some contact shadows. Otherwise, losing the features of the face apart from the eyes, I think, is a nice touch. It sort of suits that plain, clean, smooth aesthetic of the persimmon.
I think it'd be cool to see the gesture of him hunching over, just pushed even further, just to get a little bit more. I mean, he looks nice and calm.
Yeah, he looks very calm here. Yeah,
but I think it'd be a nice way to add a little bit of interest.
Yeah, like he's about to strike.
Yeah.
Slightly wider stance on the legs. Just like push this pose further, I think. Lemon boy. This is actually really nice. It's very clean, and it's like you've picked out the shapes that you want to use, and then you've kept stuck to those throughout. Yeah, he's good fun. I think the thing that's lacking would be volume, because the shapes are very clear on like a 2D plane. Ideally, you would see them kind of curve around the shoulders or curve around his waist a little more. And bringing some of like the texture of the skin into his head, stuff like that. Plus, the only sort of it's a duochromatic color scheme. Like there's very little beyond the green and the yellow, and I think maybe just variations within those colors would help a bit. The bamboo sword, or maybe the stem on the sword, it's a lighter green, and of course the blade is grey, but I don't think it's quite enough, and so I think a bit more interest in some patination around areas that are more important, like the shoulders that are close to the face, or some shifts in hue elsewhere, I think would help a lot. But otherwise, I think the clean aesthetic works well, like the way you've got the shins blending into the feet. I think it's a very nice, clean, stylized way of approaching bits like this.
I think it could also benefit from a lot of asymmetry. It does have a little bit of asymmetry happening, but as like for example the leaves and the post itself is a very typical way to break symmetry.
Mm.
But I think it could be pushed even further.
Yeah, because it's flatter, you don't have that natural asymmetry from the how things look differently in perspective on the other side. So, because it's kind of like the chestnut person I'm doing at the moment, they are pretty much symmetrical down the middle. Their pose isn't that asymmetrical, but because on one side you see the outside of the shell, on the other side you see the inside, visually you get a ton of asymmetry, and that literally just comes from the pose. Oh, this is cool because you've got like the whole orange unpeeling from behind. So we're seeing the top of the orange, and then it looks like you could actually make this shape by unpeeling it in the right way. Here I just think you need to consider the lighting more carefully so that we get more volume, because at the moment it just feels very flat, and the lighting's very consistent throughout, especially since it's kind of mid-tones in the character and then the background's also mid-tone. But otherwise the use of the elements of the fruit I think actually work well here. It makes perfect sense. You haven't like broken the rule. The skin is all used as clothing, and then the internal flesh is used for the character's actual flesh. So I think the main thing is pay attention to lighting, and like imagine placing an image of an orange here. Like this dress is panning out in the same spherical pattern spherical form that an orange would make. And so imagine how the highlight would actually fall on an orange, or in this case I guess it's a mandarin because it's a peely one. You'd have like a big highlight here, and then it would wrap around to shadows as it goes down to the bottom. So that'd be the main thing. But otherwise I think there's a nice balance in shapes.
Do you think you would utilize the leaves more? Because I think I want to. The greens feels quite separated from the girl, but I think the only thing that ties it together is that
just a bit in the front.
on her chest.
It's sort of nice because, like I described, you can imagine that the entire body can be peeled from a single orange, and that's kind of nice. But I think you're right. Like you need a bit more variation, and perhaps using the pith, like the properly white pith, might be a good way to give some trim to the inside of this this dress, and that'll just add that bit more interest that holds it all together. Pitanga. I forget what the pitanga is. Is that the one where everything's... No, it's the hala fruit. Pitanga. Hold on. Quickly Google. Pitanga. Oh. No, it's quite different again. Yeah, worth Googling so that you can actually see what it looks like. Okay, I definitely see the pitanga more now. These sort of roughly shaped things. This is essentially the body of the pitanga, and then it has the stem coming out the top. Yeah, I think you've actually used that pretty well in this case. You've gone for the sort of Edwardian-looking clothing with the ruffles, and it's quite interesting to see it around the hips rather than the shoulders. It's a fun perspective, and you emphasize the balance of lighter on the top and heavier on the bottom, because in the arms at least you're gone for the really thin stem arms and then thick chunky legs. It's certainly not like the general approach I take, because I find most of the time I prefer making things top heavy. But you've managed it very well here, and I'm assuming that's a stone in the middle of the pitanga is his head. Is he holding a wand or sword? Because at first I saw it as a fishing rod, but I realised that there's actually no string attached.
I think it's a wand, yeah. Like
presumably wand, yeah. He's like a magician.
No, wait, he's a swordsman.
Swordsman? Oh, I didn't read.
So it'd be one of those really tiny ones.
It's a rapier.
They're in fencing, right?
Yep. Well, my main critique would probably be the sword then. Because it's got this slight wave to it and the little notches along, I don't see it as something that has a sharp edge. So perhaps if you just emphasize the shape of these notches on one side and then smoothed it out on the other, So I had a single sharp edge. That would make it a bit clearer. But otherwise, I think it might just be balanced. I think it's very unnatural to have such skinny arms. So perhaps a little more thickness in those would help.
I think it was a bold choice. It's kind of fun because I'm assuming that's the stem of the flower, right?
It is a difficult one, isn't it?
Well, I also wonder why we as humans, excuse me, prefer top-heavy characters as opposed to a bottom-heavy character.
It's a very good point. I think it's I mean, if you imagine somebody who's physically fit, you can gather a lot of muscle around your thighs, but otherwise, as you get towards the bottom, like your ankles don't get thicker, your feet don't get bigger, your waist doesn't get wider, but like you start to build a lot of muscle as you go up the chest, and so like men will become like a big triangle, and like all the muscle then resides in the top. So at least when you design muscly characters, they become top heavy even if they have massive thighs. Their chest just sort of balloons out. That's where you have most of the volume. I think that's generally what we like about top heavy characters.
So just to like think about this, is it okay if I have a few more comments about this one?
Go for it.
All right. I mean, let's say if you actually kept the skinny arms, right? Just because it's fun. You can do the exact same thing with the legs, just to complement that, because I just think the legs look quite odd, as it's quite thick, and then you have these skinny arms, and then as well, his bottom half is actually huge in comparison to his top half.
Yeah.
But I think if you kept that really big, bulbous, I guess, upper part of his legs, but you made his stems really long and skinny and slender and elegant, I think this could make the character look...
it could be quite fun, yeah. I think essentially these are sort of feminine proportions. Like if you imagine the proportions of hip to chest on an idealized female figure, that's he's got here. But then it's a man, so I guess he's just kind of like combining the feminine and masculine traits, which is why it sort of feels bizarre at first.
Yeah, but then here's the important bit, and that is what's pleasing to look at. Even if it's like it was a hermaphrodite or a mix of both, it's not as pleasing to look at because the legs doesn't really taper into anything. I don't have any special shape to them. It's just very straight up and down, and the same thing happens with the arms. So I might as well mimic one or the other. You know?
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to use a taper to show where the eye should be moving around the design. All right. Watermelon dude. Interesting. So, I mean, I would say that you need to bring back some of that green, even just a little bit, because it appears as grey, but I do still see the texture of the watermelon. So it almost, yeah, it's not obvious at first, but it almost works. And I do like this kind of sullen, sad style, or it's very poignant. I do love that little flower with like the discus petals. Also, Ace Wheelie, is it not meant to be a Victorian dress with the big bell-bottom trousers and the ruffles at the joints? Yeah, I said Edwardian, but yeah, Victorian or Edwardian, that's the sort of vibe I get from it with the ruffles. Yeah, definitely.
I feel like the watermelon is a... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, I just wanted to comment. I thought the watermelon was a really tricky one and a high risk because it's futuristic, but it's using a lot of organic elements. And I also feel like it's kind of poking fun at, if plants kind of ruined Earth.
Oh yeah, that's really fun. It's like a post-apocalypse, but the plants did it instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's cool. I genuinely like his proportions a lot. He's a totally different sort of vibe from the rest of the characters. He feels like it would work really well in minimal animation. I think his balance of shapes is nice. and he feels very friendly, and like he looks like Big Hero 6, and that was a very successful design, and he's got the same balance as that, which I like. I would say it's hard to immediately go it's a watermelon, but certainly in the context of fruit people, I see it. And it's quite fun how you've removed so much of that color and can still show that it's the watermelon skin. I think a little more attention to the forms so that he feels properly rounded. And like I find it odd that you can't see the back of the inside of his collar. Like his collar sort of, you see it go into the helmet, and then it just sort of disappears behind his head. So I would complete that. And it's nice then because you get an overlap and you can see how the head sits within the helmet. And then after that, just maybe one more color, because the watermelon has red in the middle, black seeds, but they're minor details. You've got green outside, and then you've got that white layer in between. But having made the watermelon skin very washed out and colorless, it kind of fills that white slot already. So ideally, bringing in an extra color would sort of complete it as a set. Rule of 3. It's cute little blueberry.
Oh, by the way, for those that haven't noticed yet, the reason Thomas skipped over was because the guy he just skipped over was the winner.
Oh yes, for people who didn't see earlier, this was a winner. In fact, it was the winner in the end. Go back and see our judging. It should be in the VOD, but I'll put it on YouTube, so you don't need to leave now. Yeah, and you can hear our thoughts on it. Yeah, this is good fun. I think it's hard to tell it's an immediate blueberry because of the striations across his chest, like all these dents. They feel more like an insect shell. But I do like
Wait, is this a blueberry?
Yeah, blueberry.
Okay.
But I do like the scale. Essentially, it's telling a very fun story. I'm not sure what he's collecting. They could be aphids or something. Just very simplified. But keeping the blueberry at the scale of a blueberry, I think, is a really fun way to tell a story with it. Yeah, but mostly it's sort of unclear what these forms are because of the rendering. So essentially, you've got a back and forth between really bright and really dark all the way across this body. And I'm assuming this body is supposed to be round, almost spherical, but we don't get that communicated because there's no difference between the brightness of this area and the brightness of this area, whereas this should be far brighter overall compared to the lower half. So there's just a few. Well, there's things that where you need to apply like a more consistent lighting across. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, the thing I wanted to add was just be careful that you don't break your own design, because you have the arm that's sticking out on the left-hand side, but then he is holding the branch with his right arm.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It's not using the shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. So, like his arm should be coming through this hole, but then it's now like trapped inside his ruffle.
Exactly. So that's where you would try and adapt. And for example, instead of cheating a little bit, you could. I mean, cheating is okay, but it doesn't really work in this case. So what I would have done is that I would have actually tilted his whole body, and then he, at an angle, so that he can still have his arm through the shoulders.
Yeah,
he can grab it.
And it'd be a more realistic hanging pose. Like imagine if you were hanging from one arm, like your whole body's going to tilt, so that the center of balance shifts.
Yeah.
Using the white sort of glossy texture you get on the blueberries as the eyelashes, I think actually works really well though. That was a good inclusion. That like dry matte color. A 3D one. I think this might be the only 3D entry. I can't remember though. I think actually a lot of the shapes across this are really successful. My main issue would probably be in color choice. Because I'm really not one with 3D knowledge. Like I've experienced how difficult it is to make colors exactly how you want them, but the modeling in like the shape of these legs and the body and stuff, there's a lot of really appealing shapes in here. Yeah, I think there's actually a really nice balance, like the feminine curves going through the belly and then shooting around and stuff.
Mm.
It's
Cool
sort
texture.
of, yeah. I'm not quite sure what's going on with like this arm being covered and this sleeve being pulled back. I could have get the impression that maybe the banana skin can unpeel, so you can have like gloves that unpeel themselves and then the hands come out. I guess like this character's set up to be doing something, but there's no object for them to interact with, so it's unclear what sort of message we're supposed to take from it. Mm-hmm. But my main criticism would be that it's the colors. They don't separate out the forms as well as they could. Like I'd like to see this green be properly different from the yellow, and then I think the choice of this sort of darker orange is a weird one because it doesn't. I don't see that color when I see a banana at all. I think it'd be better to go for that matte white color that you have inside a banana for the skin. And that would then make things like the lips stand out properly. And you can then give them dark eyes to pop out on the white skin instead of this way. But yeah, shape-wise, I think there's a really nice mesh underneath this. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I was just trying to think about what the character's all about. I find it a bit hard to figure out what her purpose is and what she's trying to do. That's my main concern, because her reaction from face is telling me her reaction is telling me that something's happening and she's looking at her hand, but I can't quite follow up with what's going on. And
like what's happening afterwards? What's the reaction?
Yeah. So just be aware of that when you create a character design, that you don't confuse the viewer too much. And so just make sure that you're telling your story. I'm not saying story as in like a big one. I'm talking about what's happening around
in the moment,
in the scene. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in terms of shape ratios, if you go from the tip of the shoe to crotch and then to shoulders to head, there's a really nice big, medium, small there that I think is really appealing.
That's a good point.
Appealing. Oh no, I'm amazed we haven't had that already. All right. What was this again? So this was one where it was very confusing at first. I didn't know what the fruit was. Oh, the golden pear.
This is called the golden pear?
Because basically I find it very difficult to see which... Oh, there's a golden pear here. Oh, I see. I'm assuming he's supposed to also be a character based on a pear. Anyway, from a distance, like my first read is the really nice spiral that you have on the head. And there's some really lovely render in there. I really get a sense for its volume. So this is my favorite bit. There's this spiral going up through the top. And essentially the way you've done the cast shadows and the occlusion shadows within, make sure you apply that to the rest of the body, because this implies a light that's coming from above. And then we don't get any sense that the shadows wrapping around the bottom of his chin or the bottom of his belly. So the rest of the character ends up feeling quite flat. But then, I think a lot of the body feels really solid. The face, I think, is sort of confusing. Like there's this triangle element in the mouth and the nose, and I'm not sure where it's sort of come from in terms of the pear influence. So like going for a more conventional face might benefit it. But
the guy has a really interesting story on his side. Do you want to read it?
Let's read it. It continues. Damn.
was a long story. So
That's cool.
yeah, it's cool. And my critique with this is the demon baby character. It's not. If I'm getting this right, that's not really a fruit, right?
Yeah, I guess not. Like, this is the demon that's forever searching for, or forever trying to help their loved one and find inner peace, which I guess is the golden pair. So I suppose it's maybe that's why. But it does have the leaf elements on top. The leaf elements here. I don't know. It's a confusing one.
I think that's the biggest drawback of this piece. Is mainly it's quite confusing for me.
Yeah. I think it needs a stronger use of shadows, like for what's here. But then, in terms of the design itself, I'm not. It's too complex a story to immediately understand what's happening in the piece, and so when it's like just a fruit person, we want to see how the fruit relates to this character, the main character in the scene.
Yeah.
Simplicity goes a long way. Yeah, I genuinely think that the pose and like the volumes and the shape of the body, I think, are really appealing. The face is the thing that like isn't appealing, but it's a demon, so it's not supposed to be beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. It's a cool one, but I think focusing on like the simplistic elements that you can immediately understand is really important, and then you can add a complex story in afterwards. That then basically you need to get the viewer interested immediately, so that they want to know more. And at first, I think it's a bit too confusing to draw people in.
Yeah.
Apart from this curl on the top, because this this spiral on the top is gorgeous. Oh yes. All right, so I really like the top half of this character. I think it's another really great use of the banana shapes. Like it rivals the other one with the big quiff for use of banana in the head. I think this stuff is lovely. Yeah, my only issue sort of then comes because the bottom half just feels a lot stiffer in comparison. There's a lovely sort of curve through the chest, and then these legs feel like they're straight down to the ground. And if you just continued that curve a little bit, so that her stance wasn't stiffened at the bottom. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to, if you go back there, the hat is a really strong part of it. The cape is a really strong design, and the shirt is also quite cool.
Yeah.
But then you suddenly get very realistic grounded elements, such as the pants and the belt and the books and whatnot, and it suddenly separates the whole character, which is, I mean, I don't know what you think, but it doesn't really tie the character. I think it cuts it in half. So
yes, I think I'd agree with that.
Yeah, if you added some other material on the hat or on the cape, just to blend.
Yeah, I'd like to see the green elements from the banana leaves be used in the rest of the design.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't feel sort of unrelated. But yeah, the way you've used all the banana shapes, I think, is excellent.
Yeah, the hat and the cape is great.
Yeah, the strawberry hound is great too. Like, I can imagine those leaves ruffling around. It's kind of like one of those moles that has the big flared nose for feeling its way around.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, it could be worth changing the size of this staff or bringing it down at an angle so that it means you can fit more of the character into your shot. And I do like this cape that displays out with such distance, but the result is that trying to fit in this the huge staff and the cape makes the character very small, and I want to see this chunk because this is my favorite bit, but it's too far away when you're seeing the entire image. So it could just be a composition thing, like if you had a different pose, that could fix it too. But it might be worth pulling back on the size of some of these elements so that you can showcase the things that work the best. Anyway, one of my favorite faces. I really like how it's integrating into the banana. All right, all right. I'm not entirely sure what fruit this is. Ah, grapes. Okay. Actually, I kind of see that in the fingers now, the way they've stylized the fingers. I think it's using too many sharp edges for me to think of the rounded form of the grape immediately. Although I then do like the fact that you've used like the stems for the legs. They kind of look like the prosthetic running legs that you get.
Yeah, can I chime in?
Go for it.
If you if you don't want to be obvious with what type of fruit it is or what it is by shape, a great way to do that is actually studying the material of the fruit. So what you could do is study the surface and the texture of the surface of the fruit. So, and the color itself is not. We kind of knew what it was by the color, but having that sort of gloss and that matte in there could really help push that and sell that idea that it's a grape if you don't want to use the same shapes.
Yeah, exactly. Because you may want this kind of more edgy looking character, but you don't want to fill it with round shapes because it's going to fight against that cool look.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then just more consistent lighting to sort of show the forms, I think, would help.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, and like a more defined face perhaps as well, because at the moment there's not too much to look at the top. Yes, here we have Banana Boy. Excellent, excellent. This we were quite taken by on our first viewing. I think it's just a really nice use of texture. I feel like it was pretty clear. We immediately understood what it was, even though it was very sort of abstract in the way it represented it. The biggest criticism we had against it was that it just feels like it's lacking ambient occlusion. Like it needs the shadows which define the forms within, so that it's easier to read, because all of these forms feel like sort of graphic shapes within a silhouette, and they need to have some light that shows where the highlights run across them and gives them volume, because I'm imagining they're essentially cylinders, but we don't have much information to tell us that.
Yeah. That's basically what I had in mind as well.
Yeah. But
I think if we rendered it as well, like polished it and pushed it further, I think this character could look really badass, especially with the this is a pomegranate, right?
Yeah, the pomegranate.
Yeah, the texture of the pomegranate could have been really, really cool if you had rendered it out and added some more gloss and highlight, and then adding the occlusion shadows, as Thomas mentioned.
Yeah, like all of this stuff, like it's squiggling through. It's got this wonderful kind of fleshy, grotesque feeling. It feels like a very cool start to a character design, like the first rough out with color. I think you just need to take it further.
Finishing it up.
Yeah. This one was also something that I kept around for a while because I think it's really strong. The main issue I think we had was that it was hard to tell exactly what fruit it was. And I think that mostly comes from the inclusion of the seeds here. When I think of the passion fruit seed, it's kind of got this very see-through, slightly greenish casing, and this material just sort of, it looks more like a mango flesh or something like that. It didn't scream the passion fruit seed to me, but otherwise the motion of the character is lovely. It would be nice to see what's happening with her feet, but I also appreciate that you can't have the extreme feet tucked in pose without hiding them. So
I think it's actually quite fun that he tucked it in and managed to make it read that it was tucked in.
Exactly, yeah. Like it's amazing how well that reads. Wherein, like if you look at the silhouette, the body just goes into a big lump. But you've managed the creases and stuff to really communicate that the legs are tucked in and she's jumping in the air. So I think that's really successful.
Also, look quite juicy.
Looks very juicy. I also really like these lips. I think they're great. Yeah, so just like a bit more attention to the internal textures of the passion fruit, I think, would really help with these jewelry items. Yeah, good. Really, really solid. Ah, yes. I agree with the comments. Her dress is so cute. It looks like fabric, but also looks so edible. Yeah. I think this is a really strong use of the fruit. It's very nice.
Got a nice flow to it.
It sort of obscures what fruit it's going to be in the upper body, the upper half. Like even though her hat is full of oranges, it's really communicated and it really shines through with this like bright light underneath. Yeah, it's very cool. I like that she's like incredibly vain. I'm not sure if I get that feeling from an orange. Oranges feel quite humble to me for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like orange gets all the attention.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess the Clementine gets kind of ignored and the lemon.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. I think with this one, I think it could utilize. I mean, on the first read, it has a strong silhouette, but I think after that first read, it's not as interesting anymore. So something to add more interest is adding more detail, adding some small shapes to just break more of the silhouette. I mean, the folds could have really been utilized a lot more here, I think, and you can even add more layering. So kind of like Victorian dresses, where they have the first outer layer, and then they have a second layer, and then they even have a third layer under that, and you could have really added that layering under her dress.
Yeah, the ruffles underneath. Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that would be good. And continuing the sort of big fancy dress look, you could possibly add some sort of ruffling to the shoulders or something like that up here.
Yeah.
It'd also be nice to see like these green patches reference the texture of a leaf a bit more closely.
Yeah. In fact, it could have even utilized more leaves onto the bottom half. Could have been cool.
But there's some really nice stuff in the face, like the shape of the nose and all of the light highlights in here. Very cool. Yeah, yes, it's Daniel's. So I doubt it will surprise you, but my absolute favorite bit is this lemon boy, as I expressed in the comments.
Wow, yeah. Actually, I saw this one earlier.
He's got so much attitude, and then the dude himself, I love his face. It's just like, oh yes, I defeat my enemy.
Oh ho ho! Great athlete.
And they've like used the seeds in the body as just like this crazy set of abs. Genuinely, I think it uses the elements of the fruit really well. There's possibly like this sort of sense that you've just got many chunks of spiky armor up here, but I think it's fairly well balanced. You've got bigger ones and smaller ones. I think it'd be nice to have a single big piece, and then maybe a couple of medium, and then some clearly smaller or thinner pieces to these shell shapes.
Yeah.
But I think his face is great. And then, yeah, this little boy down here. See, he's got the perfect proportions of one big, two medium, two small. I think there's nothing I would change about this little guy.
There's like a little samurai.
Yeah, he's awesome. So I think that sums up most of what I'd say. Then just like some things to make it clear where the leg separates from the cape behind. Could just be some slightly darker shadows, and a more clear highlight going down the middle with it falling off the shadow around the outside. But he's great. I love this duo.
I think what I would have done differently with his armor, I think I would have liked to see. Did you say that you would want to see smaller shapes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of like if you look at real armor or medieval armor, they do have that layering happening, so that when for example, in the shoulder pad or in shoulders, when their arms are down, all the layers are flat out, and then once they push their arms up, all of the layers get squished. So it's kind of like those elements, which would have been cool to see more of, even on the feet as well.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice.
Because the reason for saying that is that I feel like that dude feels a lot more realistic.
He does, yeah. He's got like that that fantastically human face inset into the green flesh. Yeah.
But this one was a lot of fun to look at.
It's really fun. I love these characters. Also, really nice angle of the opposing angle of the shoulders versus the hips. I think that's really strong. Yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff. Yeah, this guy just working hard. I'd love to know, I guess, more about his story. He's like a really small banana because Allen keys. I don't think Allen keys get that big, do they? I think those are sort of 5 centimeters long. So he's a pretty small banana. But then I guess the pencil on him is even smaller.
It's just go along with it. He just took a bar and bended it.
He took a bar. I think the main thing I'd say is that I just want to see a bit more color variation across his suit. Like, I kind of like the big simplistic jumpsuit, but or maybe it's good that it's like this statement simple piece. He kind of looks like he's in prison, but then also maybe works for someone with like a very specific outfit. I'm not sure what I get in terms of story from him.
No, me neither. I don't think it really utilizes enough of the fruit elements.
I'd agree with that.
We wanted to see.
Yeah.
Because at this, it could be any type of person in that suit.
Yeah, cover the head, and there's nothing to communicate that he's a banana.
I mean, what you could have done instead is add banana peels and leaves. Like, leaves is like the easiest thing. You can just snap on leaves. What you could have also done is that you could have added a commercial related to the fruit world, similar to the second place winner that we had with the pumpkin girl, which had commercials because she was a human, but just to like tie in with fruit world.
Icons about it.
Yeah,
insignia and stuff.
Replace like the pencil and the bar with maybe like twigs or or maybe even like something that you would use to actually kill fruits with. I don't know.
Yeah, kill the fruit. Like, he could be holding a grapefruit spoon or something like that. That would be quite fun.
Yeah. That's why he's wearing I don't know what that uniform is, but maybe he's in prison.
Yeah. But I think he's good fun, and the rendering of the boots is lovely. Like, these feel really 3-dimensional. He's a fun character. He definitely begs the question of like, what's he about to do and where's he been? Ah, yes, Spiky Boy. It's a conker or chestnut. Although this confused me because this looked like an olive for a long time, but it's definitely got like the texture of the chestnut within. I really like the stuff up here, especially with like these sort of cross-hatching elements. I think his face is great, his expression. It just becomes a little too chaotic down below. Like, it's hard to tell whether these are arms or this is his body. Like, I can see this is one arm, which implies that this is another arm just hanging down, but I can't see if there's like a separation to his body, and then these must be the legs at the bottom. So for me, it's just clarifying where his limbs are going. But I do like his face a lot.
I think this is also a good example of someone that has a little bit too much energy, and well, not energy, but chaos. He certainly has a strong pose, and the face is a big bonus because adding personality to your character and having like pushing things, even if their face isn't like doing much, just making sure that it flows nicely. But this guy, he has this angle, he's looking down at you, he's got an attitude, maybe,
spiky, and he knows it. And that's cool. But yeah, again, be careful with the silhouette here. I guess it would be very difficult to balance it, but then you would shave off a few areas as an excuse. And,
yeah. The main thing is make it all black and white and see if you can actually see where his limbs are going, because if you looked at just the silhouette, there'd be no indication that his arms coming in and holding something, because all of this stuff would be encapsulated within the silhouette, and then even as it is, I can't actually see where his other arm is going. So it's a good test to use to like make sure it's readable.
Contrast as well. Be careful with contrast.
Yeah, a lot of contrast, and so it sort of detracts from the face in places. Okay. Oh, this is lovely. I like this. She's real sweet. There's a couple of things in the body that sort of flatten it. I think across here you could do with having some of the like highlights and shadows that you've got that define the shape of the legs. But using the kiwi seeds as like transitions between areas, like on the thighs, and then as freckles on the cheeks. I think that's a really nice use of those. Oh, I was hoping we'd get a zoom. Zoom in. Yeah, I think introducing some secondary colors would really benefit, because at the moment we just have like different saturations and brightnesses of green. Ideally, some more of that brown from the skin of the kiwi could come into, maybe it's her hair, maybe the bulk of her outfit, or even if it was just the whole cape that was brown instead of green. That would help separate the shapes a little more.
I think a good idea, if you want to come up with ideas for yourself to create a character design. So, for example, if you were thinking about doing a kiwi, which you are doing here, is that you take a few notes about what you can add. So in this case, I think the cape is, I think it's like a loss of opportunity when you could have added something like Game of Thrones, where they have the fur.
Yeah.
Kiwis can get quite hairy, so I think you can have definitely added some like a fur cape, like kiwi textured fur cape to add to that. Maybe something like that to really sell the idea that this is a kiwi fruit, but it's not just like some kiwi fruit that's using some elements, but it also feels a bit practical.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, beyond that, I think the anatomy of like the legs feels strong compared to the arms. I think these need some more attention for where they get thicker and where they thin down in the joints. But like I think this transition from thigh to leg, thigh to calf feels really strong. So a bit more attention on the arms, I think, would go a long way. Yeah, cool. Yes, this boy. Let's show the colored version. Oh wait, that's not the fully colored version. Where's the? Oh, there's another one. Okay, we'll skip it for now because I'm sure there's another one. Cool. All right, this is another. I keep forgetting the name of this. Physalis. There we go. Got another Physalis. No.
This one is actually very interesting. It even added a little bit of like an insect vibe to it.
It does, yeah, because it's lacking human eyes, and then these two big orbs, they start to look like giant praying mantis eyes poking out the side.
That's actually really cool.
Yeah, I like it. You get like a double take where you realize what the actual sort of face structure is. I really want to see more lighting on it. Like at the moment, it's a light on dark silhouette, and it's very difficult to like really communicate forms when you do that. But I'd like to see shadows actually wrap around these forms so that I can see the cylindrical form of the legs and the torso and stuff.
Yeah, I would say the same as well. I think the main thing that's holding this character back is it has a strong design. I really like it, but the technical part of it and the presentation is a bit weak.
Yeah, And the blur that you've put on here, I think one of the main reasons this works and helps a lot is because the Persimmon cage, sort of a floaty bit you've got coming down behind, it has the same detail density across the entirety of it. And you want to make sure there's a gradient between details. At the moment, it makes it very flat. And simply by putting a blur on it, you now have sharp details at the top and then a softness down at the bottom. And this gradient really helps in making it more appealing and directing the eyes where they should be looking. Now you know you need to be looking at the face at the top. So try and apply that not through the blur, but through how you distribute the detail in this element behind. And I think that'll work really well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's cool. I want to see more. Yes, of course, we've covered this lady.
Yep.
This is another one where I think there may be is there a second version of this? No, there isn't. It's so hard to read because of the contrast, but I want to read more of it because from what I can tell, the distribution of shapes looks really nice. But like lost edges are often a cool thing to incorporate into your piece, but in this case, it's so hard to tell when the dress actually ends within here. I really don't know where her waist is. And she might be sliced in half down the middle, but I'm not sure. In general, I think this S-curve coming down through her body is lovely. But it's the color choice and total lack of contrast in places that you need it that just make it very hard to read.
I think it was a very bold decision to have the orange yellow in the background, the same as her orange yellow. But I think you can definitely gotten away with it if you added more contrast and strengthened the shadow, because that could have worked. But if not, if you went for a different style, where there's less shadows happening, then yeah, you would need to make the background a different color or a completely different value, so we can actually see the character.
Yeah, because the only thing that stands out would be the leaves. And it's not even because they're actually that brighter green. It's just they're the brightest and darkest thing in the image at once. So yeah, shape-wise, if you showed me the line art of this, like I think I would really like it. But you've got to sort out that value structure so that we can actually read what's going on. Otherwise, yeah, the forearms I think works really well. It looks like they join very naturally to the upper body. I sort of hope that you do another version of this. Like if it's on a separate layer in Photoshop, just tweak the values so that it pops out from the background. The best way would be make it black and white and then work on it like that. So you can make sure you have a value structure first.
If you squint your eyes, it's only three things I can really see.
Yeah.
That's her.
Shadow and hair.
The shadow of the dress and the yellow, which is slightly separating the body, and then you have the leaves.
Yeah,
that's mainly it. And that's what you can do.
Although I guess one critique on shapes, these two areas of leaves, they feel quite similar in terms of size, and I would just either thin this one down or make the hair considerably bigger. But yeah, if you've got the file and it's separated into layers, just fit it with some contrast and upload it again. I want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's guarana again. Now this is actually fun because it takes the eyes from the guarana. Like I recognize that eye from a guarana because of the huge pupil and this like really deep gloss that covers it. I think that works well. And you haven't gone the creepy route because, yeah, like the previous guarana fruit person sort of went down the route which I'd expect, which is loads of eyes and go for like a creepy monster design. But this is doing something really quite different.
I said, interest. The shoulder pads are huge. So much so that it's taking away all of the energy and really making it difficult to read the arms.
I just all feel like, well, it's essentially it is one big shape if you were to like squint your eyes, because there isn't any negative shapes that is separating it, and there isn't a lot of like contrast either, which is separating it. So
Yeah,
just changing the size of the shoulder pads and
removing some of these balls basically, so that you can see the gap between the arms. Yeah, basically making it readable if it's just a silhouette, I think is important. But the gloss from like the shine from the thunderbolt in the eye, I think is done really well. Other than that, just a stronger sense of lighting across the piece, I think is necessary. Cast shadows and things like that.
And a difficult part here would also be if you wanted to, you could have added a light source from the thunderbolt.
Yeah, and
that would make it more difficult, obviously.
It's sort of coming across here, but it's not bright enough, and it doesn't really have the color of that, so it's sort of hard to read.
But that's why I'm saying it's tricky.
Yeah, but the balance of like the top heavy, I think it works. It's a bit too much, and these shapes kind of fuse together. It doesn't look like this person could really turn their head much. Certainly not like move their arms closer to their body. But yeah, I like the idea of the guarana being electrifying like coffee. It's one of those energy things. Yeah, banana boy. I like this sliced banana design across the chest. It actually reminds me of
Thor?
Apocalypse Zero. I don't know if you've seen it. It's this old anime OVA, and the school uniform has these 6 big star dots like that go across the chest like this. Just reminds me of that. Anyway, it's a nice use of it because I haven't seen any. Oh no, maybe we did see sliced banana on the banana skater dude. He had sliced banana. But it's a nice use of it. The problem is, I think beyond those pieces and the bananas in his neck piece, I guess I do. Actually, this might be the only one that really has those specific banana leaves in the design, which is nice. But like the color of his body and then the brown wrapping stuff around his legs, I don't think that relates to the banana in texture or color in any obvious way.
Well, yeah, if you remove the banana crown, you wouldn't really tell.
Yeah, I think it'd be very hard to tell. But I think those banana leaves are actually a really good inclusion on the bag.
That's actually interesting. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
And so I actually quite like it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wings.
It's wings, and they work as like a nice balance of the shape. You don't have to like push his anatomy so much, but you still get this really interesting width to the character.
I'd say the one thing I would have done something either different with the banana crown, or I would have entirely removed it, because there's a very odd tangent happening right at his neck, and I feel like it's like choking and separating the.
All the lines converge at once, don't they? And it's
exactly.
Yeah, it's off-putting because of that. Generally, you want to try and get lines to join to other lines at like a T junction rather than crossing over like an X.
And if you had removed it, I think the silhouette would have read even stronger, in my opinion. But then you wouldn't think it was a banana man, would you?
I think paying attention to the materials used in the majority of the body is the most important thing here.
Exactly.
Yeah. What have we got next? This must be a fig. It's got like that oozing sort of striated texture on the inside. Let's have a look. Yeah, his fig-vin companion. Yeah, he's a fig. He's good fun. I do like this like sort of grotesque skin look from a sliced through fig as the face. I would just say that there's not too much flow in the shapes of his body. Like everything feels quite sort of lumpy and separate. I would like to see the shape of the fig, which has like that larger rounded bottom and it tapering to the top. I'd like to see you use that shape across it so that there's a motion for the eye to go across. Like it could be wider at the top, getting thinner at the bottom, or the opposite way around. And then applying that to the feet as well would be nice, so that it's not the same width all the way through, because it sort of makes it feel a bit static. In fact, you've done it in this character, like wide at the bottom, small at the top, and you have this flow that draws your eye down, and then draws it back up again to the face.
That one has a much better shape variation as opposed to the current one.
As well as the feet, actually, because you've got wider feet with smaller ankles. Like there's just nice variation throughout. But I do quite like this foot, because it's like it's curvaceous on the outside, and then it's flat and sliced through in the middle, and that's really quite fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be difficult because it's traditional to balance these colors, I'm sure, but there's a lot of contrast. It very quickly goes from dark to light, and trying to get a slightly smoother gradient would help, because otherwise I read this triangle thing as its own shape here, even though it really should be viewed as part of the entire body.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
cool use of the textures.
Before moving on, Pesto Sauces asks, what do you think about iPads as a digital art tool?
I'll let you take this one, Matthias.
Yeah, because I'm the only one who actually has iPad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get water.
Yeah. To answer the question, I think iPad is actually a really good tool to use for painting, especially if you're moving a lot. So let's say if you don't have a lot of time to be on your computer, having something transportable like an iPad, and you can sit down anywhere and work for about 6 hours, if not more, and work with Procreate. And Procreate is a very cheap product. The unfortunate part is that iPad is quite expensive. Procreate has a lot of benefits, that it's really easy to work with, and it's a very user-friendly program. My only drawback from it is that it's an expensive buy the iPad. Can you make finished paintings with it? Yes, but it will be a little bit harder because you can't edit as much. But it's really, really good for sketching. So take that as you will, depending on what your needs are. So if you travel a lot, and if you sketch a lot, that's a really good thing to get. But if you're a person that is home with your parents, or if you don't move around a lot, and you prefer, if you do mainly illustrations, I mean, getting for sketches is good still, but you don't really need it if you don't move around a lot. So
yeah,
that's mainly what I have.
Amen to that. My experience, which is very, very limited, is just that it feels really nice to use, but I haven't had a chance to do anything proper in it. Anyway, let's look at this cute pomelo. I think it's really sweet. It's kind of like, it's constructed from the way that you would cut up a pomelo and eat each section of it. I guess my only criticism then would just be that it's very unclear sort of how these elements join together, even though I think the balance of them is actually kind of nice. It feels like a very, very cute character that would work in a cartoon or something. But yeah, like trying to sort of show how these elements would fit together, and like how the joints would work. Essentially, I kind of want to see some like functionality from it.
If you just wanted to keep it super, super, super simple, the top half is separated completely from the bottom. So, you have the rounded shape, and then you have the body, which is very sharp and has these very harsh angles. So I would either continue the shapes that you had on his head and make everything else more rounded as well, or do the opposite, where you make the head very sharp, so it fits more with the body.
Because I think you could round off the points of these triangles and they would fit a bit more clearly. Yeah. Okay, we have a not corn person. So this one must be, I don't know if they actually say anything else. They have Banaba Ababan. Is that how they say it? I thought it might have been pineapple, actually, from the textures in the body. I'm not sure if they're saying that it's a pineapple or not. Or banana. I'm actually quite confused now. I see both potential for banana in the leaves, but I'd mostly say that this is pineapple.
I'm gonna have to take a look at this on my computer just to like better see what's going on.
I love this little character in the bottom right. He encapsulates the sort of big, small shape and flow that I'd love to see in this character. There's a fair amount of like nice curve going through, but I think you could accentuate it a lot more. And then the main thing is that everything's made up of really small shapes, apart from the leaves at the extremities. But in the middle, there's constant small shapes and contrast everywhere, which makes it very unclear what's happening. Like the closer I look, the more obvious that it's definitely a pineapple.
Yes, it is a pineapple. I just checked because if you go to the reference sheet, it's just pineapples.
Oh, that makes sense. But I would try and merge some of these a bit more clearly and remove some of this contrast. Like this face in here, it's very small on my screen, but there's actually a really nice render on it. And like this cute little snubby nose, but at the moment it's being completely drowned out by the constant contrast throughout the rest of the piece. So I'd work on that first, and then make it clear that either she's standing on two main legs with like a coat tail, or is using all these legs equally, and she just has four legs. I think that's clear.
I'm very sure that's a coat leg. That's the tricky part because you have the legs are the same as the coat legs.
Yeah.
So that's where the confusion comes in. So just either shorten those coat legs much more,
or show that they're coming down and then like a loose essentially, because they look quite rigid, like she could be standing on them.
True. Or you make the legs a different material.
Yeah. Or like give them proper feet instead of ending with the curl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this character down here.
That's the winner.
All right, so we were very, very close to featuring this one because we love the story that it tells, and it features such wonderful use of the materials of a pumpkin despite not having any coloring, and I think that's really impressive, especially the seeds down here. Like I immediately read these as pumpkin seeds, and they've used them really well and rendered them very nicely here. Really fun, really cute. There's a lot to like in this.
Really has that children books feel to it.
Exactly. It feels wonderfully fairy tale. Like there's this magical story to be told about it. I want to know this person. I want to explore in the woods and find this person's house, and go in and make magical brews with them.
I think you're just gonna get boiled, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm gonna get boiled and eaten. But they look so cute.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, great job.
That's how they lure you.
The main thing, which may just be because of the higher contrast of the photo, but in the way that you've given this cauldron, like these smoother gradients from light to dark, I think you need to treat the dress in the same way. At the moment, we still have full contrast range from dark to light at the back here, and I kind of want to see this whole area become dark so that it separates out from the child in the foreground, and then in general elsewhere I want to see that used again so that all of this gets slightly darker towards the edge, and then we really feel that spherical form.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
That's about it. I think there's a ton of great storytelling in it. Good job. Oh, and here we go. We have more Physalis.
Yeah, this one's very popular, huh?
It's a really cool shape. It's got some great textures in it. Unfortunately, I think it's a shame that you have this one covering so much of it in the foreground. I realised that not much is actually being obscured, but it feels very intrusive. So that'll be my first response. It's just, this feels too intrusive in the piece. But I do like that he has these cute little ghost-like characters flying around him.
True.
I think then you just need more variation in the color of the character. Like I actually really like how you've gone to this dark color at the bottom. And I don't know whether this is shadow or whether it's the local color of the skin, but I'd like to see it as the local color, so that we just have some variation across. And if you did the same thing to the arms, I think that would be really nice.
having those, I don't know what those things are. Those balls, those green balls.
Also, I was wrong. Sorry, it's a gooseberry. My bad.
Oh, sorry, never mind. But anyhow, those green balls that he has around his waist. That's one. You just be careful when you add an element and just leave it there, because he would just is gonna catch a lot of attention and it's gonna leave more questions than answers, or it's not gonna like. It's not really playing a part of the character's design. It's just kind of sitting there. So just adding either playing with that more or removing it would help.
Yeah. Like I want to see what their purpose is. Like if they had little stoppers on them or something, I'd understand them as vials or a container of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's nothing to really imply that at the moment. And yeah, of course, is gooseberry like the really cute one from earlier with the huge headscarf?
Right.
Yeah, those crinkly leaves. I definitely see it now. But I'm trained to see Physalis and things now. All right, we've got another pineapple. A great immediate understanding of the use of the pineapple. I think that works really well. The thing that just holds it back would just be sort of like, unfortunately, it's a general anatomy thing. Very hard to sort of critique specifically, but there's elements of the pose that feel a bit stiff. But the distribution of colors, I think, works really well. It's clear which elements are used where. Like you've got really hard armor pieces as the brown stuff. The softer fabric things use the flesh of it, and then you've actually got like a human skin underneath. So I think that it's a really good distribution of those materials throughout.
Yeah.
I would say that you want to be careful you don't have these repeating sized shapes in these areas. It's nice that you have big ones in the neck compared to these small ones, but even within areas like these knees, because you've got like the same size shape repeated over and over, it loses the appeal that it could have if it was slightly more varied.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it's just the leaves that are sticking out up from her behind her back, or behind her, not her behind her back, but behind her neck. Kind of takes the attention away from her ponytail. It kind of doesn't quite make sense to removing it. Would have just helped reinforce either leave one in or remove the other.
Yeah, like you could have moved these round to the shoulders and have them like poke out to the sides so that the ponytail has room to flow from behind. Because it's a good point. I actually didn't really pay attention to the ponytail at all, even though it's actually quite a nice shape curving around the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool stuff. Here is the Halifruit again. Now this one's fun because you've really stripped down the Halifruit to its stone. I like how you've used it to like create this very scary looking pockmarked face. Ideally, I would have seen a couple more of the Halifruit chunks kind of coming off to the side, just to communicate the design a bit more. Because I don't think I would have necessarily understood what it was immediately. And then, yeah, bringing some of that into the body, those shapes into the body as well would help.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting choice to actually leave the stone as the head. But yeah, I agree. His body feels not that interesting, especially when you could play around with the potential use of the Halifruit. Because you can add something around his neck or on his back, just to like reinforce that this is like a Halifruit, or it's just a loss of potential. I think that you could have utilized.
And like I like how you've made sure that the extremities end in green, and then it transitions from this dark orange to yellow as it gets towards the head. But I don't think it's quite enough on its own. I think you need to put more in to communicate the shape of the Halifruit, like wedges. I don't know what you'd call them, segments. His weapon's cool though. I like this shape. But yeah, some more clothing I think would help this one, because otherwise it loses a lot of interest. And sort of just general, like a bit more attention to anatomy detail would help. But his face is really fun, and like how you've like kept the brightest highlights to the middle and had it fall off around the edge really makes the head stand out as the best rendered part. Like it feels solid in 3D, and you get this like soft, shiny surface feeling. So I think that's been done well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I really like this actually. This pineapple mech. I think the distribution of shapes across it and the use of like the pineapple rings, so different ways you can serve a pineapple up. Just think it works really well. Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I actually really like the shapes of this one. I just feel the metal ship part is just too heavy, just too top heavy. I would have actually just made it much smaller, so that you could see more of this person's body.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice.
It's a bit blobby and a bit boxy, and this loses a lot of that potential use of energy and gesture that it could have had. Also, I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that. I feel the metal is a bit random, as well as applying shells or the skin on the.
Yeah, these now feel sort of almost out of place on top of the metallic elements. I think it would have been cool to see a mech made out of entirely pineapple material, and just borrow the shape design from other mech. Yeah, like other mech designs. But
like what you have in the rings around his forearm.
Yeah, like this is really cool.
Yeah, I would like to see more of that because that's a very creative design.
But yeah, I think it's really fun. And the four eyes, like, I'm not sure if it sort of really implies fruit, but I see sort of like this distribution of seeds or something in those. And I think generally I just really like it. Also, these simplified legs with the little stubby feet, it's really appealing. I just find this really appealing. So yeah, really good stab. I like it. Ah yes, we've got this lady, Stinky Jackfruit. And then this, yeah, so the coloured version works a lot better than the black and white. I don't know if this is a mistake, having them this way round, but definitely display the coloured version first, if I was you. I think this, like, it's undisputably the Hallowfruit. Like, there's no way you couldn't see it. And I think the only criticism I really had was that I'd like to see a bit more stuff that wasn't like the original fruit, because the arms and legs feel like they're just kind of skinny green humanoid things, and maybe keeping some of the striations or like some ruffles around the sleeves, something like that. And I think having this red color in the arms would actually help it stand out from the body. But yeah, in general, like this ruff is a perfect communication of the royalty look and the sort of ugly pockmarked face that you get from the inside stone. I think fits that really well. Like, he thinks he's fantastic and amazing, maybe even beautiful, but like he's got this horribly dented face. I just think it really communicates that character well, arrogant and full of themselves.
I think what I would have done is, it's very hard to see his body, and I agree with what Thomas said about the arms and the legs, and same thing, do the same with the body, because it didn't see we were kind of thinking when we had a first look at it, we couldn't quite see a lot of what was going on. So very cool with the sort of like the frill idea that you had with the flesh, but everything is super dark, and yeah, adding some red and adding some like stripes maybe on his belly, like red stripes or yellow stripes, just to show that there's some separation, could have really separated out some of the design elements.
Yeah, would have made it more clear. But otherwise, there's a ton of really cool stuff in here. As far as including the background with the chair, there's a bit too much contrast in it, and it distracts a little too much from the character, so I'd tone that down if you can. But yeah, otherwise it's really fun. The Aki fruit. I'm not sure I'm familiar with an Aki fruit. Let's quickly Google. Aki with 2 E's. Oh, it almost looks like that fruit with the eyes. It's like I see where they've got these balls in the knees now. These little seeds. Yeah, looking at the Aki fruit, you kind of have these wedges like she's got them here. But that split open and have the seeds inside. I think they've actually used the fruit pretty well in this case, with just the pinky yellow flesh on the inside. My main thing would just be the shape design feels a little plain, so pushing and pulling the forms a bit more, maybe accentuating the cinch in the waist and then having some taper across the arms, something like that I think would help. And then maybe a slightly more dynamic pose.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But otherwise, yeah, I think it does communicate this fruit very well. I'm just not familiar with it. It's really cool because like it splits open. You've got these just perfectly round seeds inside. Ackee fruit. And they're poisonous apparently. So yeah, I guess that's cool. She's got like this mist of poisonous seeds that she'll attack with. Yeah, it's a cool use of it. Simplistic, and I think you could maybe just draw from maybe some unique patterns that would suit her, or other things that you find in the fruit itself to detail out the bodice a little more. Oh, very striking. I think this works better in line art because I've already looked at this one already. Just because it's a little clearer because you've only put shadows in the body. What's going on? But like all of these slender curves, I think are lovely. So the flow of this piece is gorgeous, especially with this huge parasol overhead. I think you just need to make sure that you keep it slightly more clear, because at the moment it's very hard to read the body. All the contrast is in this stuff behind, and it's gorgeous. Like these little subtle touches of color I think are really nice, and the soft blending between them. But it's a little too loose, and so I find it very hard to see what's going on here. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you really wanted to keep that white in, push back on the shadows a lot more and desaturate it a lot more, so that it's a lot easier for the eyes to look at it. Because the first take is like, whoa, there's a lot of colors happening. So just pulling back on it can help. If you also, another confusing part about it is that I can't quite tell if it's a mistake that you left the color out on in the light, or if that was intentional. So just making sure that when you transition something from line art to paint, just make sure to blend things in properly so that it doesn't confuse the viewer.
Yeah, but I think overall, like I kind of want to paint over and just take this to a final render, because the distribution of shapes is like a big composition. I think is lovely.
Yeah, I think compositionally and even design is very pleasing to look at. It's just the way that it's been painted. It's a bit. It looks like everything's been put together very, very quickly. And
I mean, it feels like a first color pass, I guess, on a sketch. Hold on, let's quickly read it. I'm curious whether they said anything about. Yeah, so here's a kind of sketch thing. I was too late to rethink and refine. So it makes sense. But I think this was. I still think it's really strong in many regards. It's the mangosteen, which I think is will become more obvious as you render out these big forms in the top. Like it's a whole mangosteen that's been split to half, and we're seeing the character in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. We've already covered this. The pineapple wizard. Excellent. And this is another hala fruit. I think this works really well because you've extended the seed to the entire body, and then you have like everything attached to it in the same way that those segments will attach to the seed. So design wise, I think there's a really strong concept here.
I think what I would have done here is that the thing that confuses me is that you have these fleshy bits which is kind of poking out randomly from the body, and I think if we were to keep that in, I would have made them longer and maybe even flow to a certain direction, like maybe 2 or 3 different directions, so that they're not so sporadic and kind of pointing wherever. And so to make sure that the fleshy bits is one entity or like one part of the design, and then you have his body that's coming in, because this has his arms and legs,
is to say is roughly about the same size as the fleshy bits.
Yeah. And you want to make sure that those stand out. Like I'd apply the sort of big, medium, small rule to the direction of the tentacles. So like have the majority of them maybe all pointing forward and facing the same direction as him, and then one or two that are stray and going in a different direction. And that way you get a bit more of a flow and a sense of unity within them.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there's like a really nice, like the perspective feels pretty strong actually between like the way you've got his head angled like this, his arms across in the middle, and then the bottom here. It's just a lot of these shapes have been left unrefined, so it's not so clear.
Yeah, making sure that the shadow wrap around the form properly too.
I think continuing to refine this would be a really good idea because it feels very unique. It's kind of got this like I don't know, experiments on children vibe, where it's like a mutated experiment thing that's kind of got like a warped sense of morality or something. I've got this like sense that this human wouldn't see things eye to eye with you. They're kind of alien, and I don't know. I get a lot of personality from this face.
Oh, I was thinking about this guy's like, I don't know, like an ascended monk.
Oh yeah, fair enough. He's got like a pulled back, reserved feel. Like he's seeing the world in a different way.
Yes. Almost
godlike.
Yeah, that's what I kind of got from it too. Like like he's shining like a star.
Yeah. It's the Jurian, very cute, very spiky. I quite like the flow because you've like tapered the entire body so that it's stretched on this axis. It reminds me of a lot of the stretch and pull you get in animation. So I think that's very strong. It's just otherwise, it's a very, very rough finish.
Yeah.
I think it suits the personality of the Jurian perfectly. With the little eye patch, like he's gonna come and steal stuff from you. It's like a pirate dude. Yeah, it'd be nice to see like stronger shadows to define form, but yeah, and sort of attention to the shapes a little more.
Well, if I were to actually give more constructive criticism to the person, instead of focusing on shadowing, I would actually focus more on making sure that your lines and your form is solid. You know, focus on that more.
Yeah, I guess focusing on that first would be better. But yeah, this cheeky little grin's great. And then we have an apple core. Delta bomb. I don't know. Preparing for vengeance. I'm guessing that's what it means. A lot of French you can kind of guess as to its exact meaning. It's quite fun because I'm getting the impression that like he's unwrapped the body. He's unwrapped the skin from the body and turned them into wings. They're then flapping out to the side.
With the leaves on the inside and then you have the skin.
Yeah. It's a nice concept. It's just yeah, again, rough execution. So work on that.
I like to think that's his mouth in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a giant mouth. Like he opens up and then he's just like ready to chomp on everything. And you see the seeds, almost like teeth. And it'd be cool if those seeds actually poked out as teeth. I think that'd be really fun.
But yeah, same thing here. Focus on if you want to try and make your characters pop out more and read better. Focus on your line and your form.
Yeah, being more tidy and purposeful with where you put lines.
Yeah.
All right. Spare pixels, yes. You finally got to it. I hope you're here. I'm going to zoom in a bit because it's a little hard to see. I think he's really cute with his big pot belly. I think that draws from the materials really well. I would just say that like you've given the seed part like a bunch of attention with its rendering, and then it feels like nothing else in the character has any shadowing or lighting. So I guess actually you've said you didn't have time for a full render. But yeah, that'll be the main thing. Like some pretty simple shadows under the arms and the belly, and then cast shadows underneath that cowl at the bottom would go a long way to making it feel more finished. And I suppose this kind of speaks more to potentially how you go about doing a render. Like you have a pretty tight line art here, and I think the face is constructed really nicely. I would focus on putting in the major shadows before you start doing any of the rendering like you've done on these seeds.
Seeing we got the Lord of the Fruits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really fun. Is there any fruit that grows in a ring or grows with holes in the middle? I guess there's the donut peach. It gets close to being a ring.
I'm just thinking about like the cut pineapple that you get.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's some really nice detailing, and like the distribution of shapes is pretty nice. Like you've got areas of rest and then areas of high detail. Just make sure you put in the shadows first, I think, when you're rendering, because it's far more important to get a sense for the volumes rather than the specific textures of areas like this.
Actually, it's interesting that you brought up areas of rest and areas of detail, but I think the areas of rest and areas of detail happen too quickly. You know, you have like it's either black and white, and I would like to see a bit better transition.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so some areas of like medium detail almost.
Yeah.
And actually, just having a variation in the size of these seeds might be a good way to do that. Even though I suppose this kind of mimics that kind of very static armor design that, like the little plate armor where you have tiny little plates layered over each other. But yeah, I think it works on the bottom, but towards the edge here and around the top, just make sure that you're showing how the form wraps around and these highlights are getting closer together because of it. The foreshortening that you get as it wraps around the form.
Andrea Barbu, I hope I'm saying the name right, who is Chewy in the chat, is hey Thomas, thank you for the top 10 pick. I was the sweet apple character with the big weapon.
Yes.
I know what you meant about the outfit feedback. Should have taken it farther regarding the fruit theme. Was super fun. Hope for more contests in the future.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Much. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Your piece was really, really strong, by the way.
Yeah, like I said, your piece has my favorite render. I think
rendering wise, it's really strong, and the use of shape was super strong as well.
Purely on like how it looks, it's my favorite character. Oh, here it is. But we had to bring in. We were really trying to like pull apart which functioned best as a fruit person.
Yeah. So I think if I were to basically choose the characters just for the looks alone, I think this one be probably the winner, actually.
Yeah.
Close to it, for sure.
Oh, it's so cute. I love it. All right, what do we have next? We've covered this one. We have covered that. We have not covered this boy. This is actually a very strong one. Another Physalis. I think you've captured a lot of the forms in this piece really well, and you've used the materials across the character in a lovely way. You could potentially have a couple more sort of like softer areas where you lose some of the detail, and these shapes kind of break up. So you have like small versions of these shapes, and they get larger in areas that you have these areas of rest. But generally, I think the way you've used it is really nice because you've got this very dense and fine, like expensive finish to this armor. I think he looks very regal.
I think the character looks a little bit like he's been from the front to the back been kind of squished.
Yes, that would be my main criticism.
Yeah, so pushing his chest out more would have helped a lot.
Because he's got a nice thickness, actually. I like this turnaround. He's got a nice thickness from the side, but from the front, yeah, we need to see like how the center of his hips come forward and don't align directly with his shoulders. So that we get the sense that he is occupying the space and isn't like flat on a plane in this 3D space.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's a very strong one.
Yeah, the lighting on this one is actually one of the strongest.
Yeah. Actually, my girlfriend, she put together her list of top 10. I can't remember exactly which ones they were, but this was in that. So,
okay. Yeah,
it's one of her favorites, just in case you want to know that. All right. Another Physalis. Guess people like him. Yeah, this is really cute. Unfortunately, we can't see much of the actual character, Like these are my favorite bits, the cute little baby Visilis things. But like her character, I can't see half of her body. So for the top alone, it's simple and it works. It's using those materials as you'd expect. The skin for the fruit flesh underneath, and then clothing and hair on top.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Like I think it's successful in what it does.
Oh yeah, I think you said everything.
Yeah, but I think this was something that they had made beforehand, and they reposted it for the competition. So I can see why it doesn't exactly fit what we were asking for. Art of Lee, yes, his apple core creature. Now, this is awesome. It is very cool. Another very close one for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the thing that didn't make it to the top 10 was that I couldn't really see what part of this was kind of like an apple to me. It was just a creature with apple elements, and that's why like technically it was really strong. By design alone, it's very interesting, but in terms of the theme and how it ties into the Fruit People world, it doesn't it's not that strong to me personally.
Yeah, because apples don't communicate like these sharp, spiky edges. I think that's something you'd find in a different fruit, and so using the apple here, like you can see the contrast. Like these soft, rounded shapes here feel at ends with the incredibly spiky legs, and so, like Matthias said, it kind of there's like a creature underneath that's just been skinned with the elements of the apple. So I think that would be my main crit. Beyond that, maybe just like a bit too much detail density in places. I think that would be my main criticism actually throughout like the render. I think it's really strong and it captures the materials really well, but it's like possibly just too dense in areas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, I've only just noticed there's like I would expect to see just a tiny bit of his back leg, so it now feels like he's missing his back leg.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Small detail. But no, really cool entry, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yes, the other big fearsome creature. Again, it's like this is a fun twist. It feels like this one's going for much more of like a twist on a banana, like a rotten banana or something, becoming terrifying. I think it does a lot of really cool stuff with that. Yeah, but ultimately it's sort of I don't quite feel the form in it. What do you think it is?
Yeah, interesting idea with making the banana a kind of like a snake-like creature. That's cool. I haven't seen that before.
Writhing around, yeah.
But I feel like it's a bit too simple, and it doesn't really tie into. It doesn't make me think of a banana. And if you actually gave this to me by its own and without any context of the fruit contest, I wouldn't think that this is a banana, to be honest.
Yeah, like I think this aspect down here at the tail, this is the thing that would maybe finally make me go, wait a second, because that's like a little defining element that I see. But yeah, in the body, I may just think that this is kind of like a it's a strange slithery yellow creature, and that could just be the texture. I think if you like mimicked the texture of the skin of the banana a little more carefully and the way that it reflects light and that kind of thing, it could have helped.
Maybe if it was eating other fruit, maybe it would have been a lot more obvious.
Yeah, that could also be a good way, like give it a little bit of story around it. But otherwise, the sort of dark, because I imagine this is all based around a rotten banana. I think maybe some more of those spots across the body would help. But I like the way that you've used that for the eyes, because I'm imagining the eyes are like placed in areas where the banana's starting to develop these really dark spots as it's getting too ripe. So there's some really strong ideas in here. Yeah. Sexy Drew Bear says, I'll still eat it. My bananas look like this at the moment because I'm waiting for them to become ready for banana bread.
Oh, so you like them getting kind of like sweet when they're brown?
Well, that's best for banana bread. I can remove sugar and make it healthier.
Smart.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
That's all of them. I'm going to quickly check that because someone had messaged me with their design. Yes, here we go, the peach. But I need to open it so that it's not public. I don't want y'all seeing my messages. Here we go. This one. I think it's really fun.
Oh, sorry. The Twitch one was kind of slow.
That big peach ass. God damn.
Ooh.
Oof.
What are you doing?
Ooh. Yeah, it's cool. I think it's mostly the render, the sort of inconsistent lighting that would just throw me off, but otherwise, it's a very fun use of that that element of the peach. I like it a lot, actually.
I feel like there's a pun somewhere, but I'm not quite getting it because it's the jam. She just killed the jam.
Is she in a jam? I'm not sure what. And the jam's also in like a metal container rather than a glass jar.
Interesting.
I'm actually not sure what's going on here. But yeah, my main thing would be controlling the contrast. Like, I think you need to focus on the peach being the brightest color and then tone down a little bit on the green, at least in the chest. Maybe this was a darker, subdued green color. It would help make her skin pop out as a bright, colorful thing. Maybe the same with kind of like what you've done with the shoes. Like, it's still a bit too saturated, I think, but this darker green I think would work better in the top. But the simplicity of the design I think works to its favor. And yet the luster, the shine of these legs, they work really well.
The lighting, I mean. There's just a bit too much contrast going on, and having a more defined
I think so, yeah.
shadows would have been easier. So I don't feel like the face should have been lit as much as, for example, as the butt.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm very curious. I may message back and be like, I'm curious about the story with the jam.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, this is by Rox K. Actually, I really like these. These are so cute. These little stories. Look at this dude. Oh, he stepped on his friend.
Hey, these are actually quite nice.
These are lovely.
Yeah, I got a nice emotion to them too. Ah, cute.
These are really lovely.
Well, is this the same guy who did the Peach Girl?
I believe so. Hold on, I'm gonna go back in my